getting through our things this morning. We're all a little bit disheveled. The traffic was crazy busy this morning, so give me a second. I'm turning on my computer. If you would please, let's all rise and have the invocation this morning. Reverend Edward Gleason of Trinity by the Cove Episcopal Church. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Let us pray. O merciful God, we gather together after Hurricane Ian. We pray for those who have died. We pray for those who mourn. We pray for those who have lost homes, jobs, their way of life. In the midst of this loss, we give thanks for the blessings found in helping hands and the loving care of neighbors and friends. We pray for all of the first responders, for those who are helping us to recover. In the midst of our recovery, we pray you to teach our people to rely on your strength and to accept their responsibilities to their fellow citizens, that they may elect trustworthy leaders and make wise decisions for the well-being of our society, that we may serve you faithfully in our generation and honor your holy name. And we pray you, send down upon those who hold office in this county the spirit of wisdom, charity, strength, resilience, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people. We offer these our petitions and desires through your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Taylor, will you lead us this morning?
I would be honored. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right. That's, I think we move right on to approval of today's agenda, consent summary.
Yes, let me read the change sheet for the record.
Please do that.
First, we have an add-on item 16H2. This is requesting that the board support the nomination of Commissioner Chairman McDaniel to the National Association of Counties Board of Directors. This was added at Commissioner McDaniel's request. We have a couple of agenda notes. At the September 27th, 2022 BCC meeting, items 9B, 10A, and 10B were continued to the October 11th, 2022 BCC meeting. These items are being further continued to the October 25th, 2022 BCC meeting. At the same meetings, items 11A through E were also continued. That was due to the change in track and forecast of the storm to a later BCC meeting and will be scheduled for future meetings. The following item was advertised for the October 11th BCC public hearing, but is being continued to the October 25th BCC public hearing. This is the GMPA for the Collier Boulevard Interstate 75 Innovation Zone Overlay, an amendment to the Collier County Growth Management Plan, specifically amending the future land use element to add the Collier Boulevard Interstate 75 Innovation Zone Overlay to attract and retain qualified target industry businesses, and to correct a Scrivener's error in the Activity Center Number 9 inset map. The subject property is located in sections 34, 35, and 36, Township 49 South, Range 26 East, and sections 2 and 3, Township 50 South, Range 26 East, Collier County, Florida, consisting of 1,245 plus or minus acres. Additionally, the Growth Management Plan Amendment and Mixed-Use Planned Unit Development Rezone on the Isles of Capri, advertised for the October 11th BCC hearings, are being continued to the January 10th, 2023 BCC hearing and will be re-advertised accordingly. Finally, as a clarification, item 16A3 is a board-directed item to advertise for an LDC amendment to be heard at 2 future BCC meetings. Additionally, the amendment shall clarify any confusion or the misapplication of the scope of a comparable use determination and is restricted to a site-specific location. We do not have any time certain items, and we have court reporter breaks set for 10:30 and 2:50 if needed.
Okay. Having said all that, let's move on to the approval of the agenda and ex parte. Commissioner Taylor, let's have you go first.
Yes,
How many microphones does one lady need?
Yeah, I know, well. Here we go, this is the one I want to use. If I don't, I'm turning that way. So, on no declarations for 16A7 and on 17A, assuming that it's not going to be pulled, I had phone calls with staff on this issue.
And you okay with the balance of the agenda? No other adjustments?
I am, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Saunders, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any disclosure. I would like to move 16H2 to the regular agenda. Just kidding, just kidding. That's your appointment.
Second.
You know, I found it, I have to apply for that position. But in order to apply, I have to have board permission to apply, which I thought was unique.
I don't
I have
know
a question for my colleagues, not you. The other thing. Did you all see this advertisement? Did you get a chance to
No.
apply? It's funny how it all.
not proper notice of this at all.
Yeah, Commissioner Saunders, I mean, you're the most experienced here. Do these things normally come direct to the person who nominates themselves, or do we all get a chance to?
Usually consent agenda items are listed long before this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
It seems to me that this is just snuck on
Yeah,
to avoid any
Yeah.
scrutiny, but
That's right, as usual.
typical. District 5.
That's what we do.
I have no changes to the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
No, I think, in all fairness, and I'll just jump in here because we're making.
Call on you now, so
Well,
just go ahead.
no, we're making light of something, but this is a very important position, and I can't think of somebody who's more experienced. You know, we all have really big jobs, and we're all sitting on different committees and whatnot. So, you know, when I saw this, I don't think my colleagues have any kind of issue with it at all. So we're just, you tease us a lot, so we get a chance to do that. But for you to represent us in this forum, in this group with other commissioners for the state, I think is obviously a perfect choice. So I make the motion that we have no issue with it. It's on the consent agenda, and appreciate all that you're going to do for us if my colleagues concur.
We did.
Yeah, they do. With reservation, we
With
concur.
reservation.
Reservations, yes, I'll go on the record.
Let the
Now,
record.
now let's get on with what we're supposed to.
Yes, sir.
Consent and summary. You
Yes,
have
sir.
any
I have,
extra?
no, I have no changes and no disclosures.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioner Solis. Are you prepared to speak, or you want me to do mine first?
I'm prepared.
Okay.
No changes, no disclosures.
All right, outstanding. And I am the same, no disclosures and no changes. So with that, I'll call for a motion for approval of today's agenda and the consent and summary.
Motion to approve?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, same sound, so moved. So, before we go on to item number 3, I want to take a moment and, because and talk about our Artist of the Month. Art Viva is a collaborative initiative that brings together the arts and cultural organizations of Florida's Paradise Coast to celebrate the artistic contributions of the Hispanic community. The year-long celebration features over 50 dedicated local events, exhibitions, performances, and educational opportunities throughout the community. Art Viva is...
Arte Viva.
Arte, thank you. I knew I was mispronouncing it. I should have let you read this. Arte Viva is presented by the Naples, Marco Island, Everglades, CVB, and will enhance the visitor's experience as well as offer our residents community-wide educational and entertainment experiences throughout the year. And Commissioner Taylor, I'm sure you have maybe an extra word or two to say about all that.
This is really the first endeavor of the art community, which you were so kind to put a leader in the CVB to help them in their work to promote the arts within our community. And this is across the board. This is from Artists Naples to individual artists from Immokalee. This is a celebration which I think, given what we've just gone through as the year proceeds, I think we're well in need of it. We're celebrating the arts, we're celebrating the Hispanic culture, and we also are celebrating our community.
And I know there are many events and programs and exhibitions. I know that our Botanical Gardens has an entire area set up for this. So if you have a moment, and that the premise of this is if you have a moment while you're here, visit some of the art that's displayed in the back of our room, and please enjoy.
And I believe the listing of programs when they are and the description of them are on our website, at the CVB website.
Commissioner Solis.
Well, and I'd just add that it is going to be a great endeavor, and the TDC and the CVB are involved. The data shows that this is a draw for us, that we can become an arts and culture. If we already are not an arts and culture, we can be. And so we can become an arts and culture destination, which will bring our visitors here and give them something else to enjoy. So it's a great endeavor. I think it's going to be wonderful. We've got some great artists.
Outstanding. All right, well, let's move on.
If we may, let's go back to 2B, which is an approval of the minutes from the September 8th, 2022 BCC budget meeting.
Thank you.
So move.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Do we accept the minutes as printed for our September 8th meeting? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign, same sound. So moved. Thank you.
That takes us straight to item 11. Oh, I'm sorry. That takes us straight to item 7, public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda.
All right, we're going to start with B.B. Cantor here in the room. Cantor, excuse me. B.B., are you here? And just got Harrison Hubschman. I'm going to bring you up during this general one after B.B. because I don't see these items you're referring to on our agenda. Okay. It's 15A and B is also public's comment, and public comment is right now as well. Okay. Thank you. B.B.?
Hi, should I introduce myself?
Yeah.
Okay, my name is B.B. Cantor. I live in Pelican Bay. Before the election, I was the CEO and president of Quiet Collier, Inc. I've suspended those operations just so because that company represented me so much, I suspended all operations so that we didn't have any confusion between what was my candidacy and what was my other life. Today I read about how badly impacted Eastern Collier County was by the flooding. And I read this in the Naples Daily News, and I read that first priority is being given to cleaning up Naples, the western part, so that we're ready for the season. What concerns me is that there's higher population densities in the eastern areas, and if we don't pick up that garbage, we're going to see huge increases in zoonotic diseases, which means that rodents live in wet areas of furniture. And when you have huge piles of garbage that aren't being taken care of, a lot of children are in danger. A lot of workers are in danger because that's where they live. They don't live in the western area near the beach where I live. And so I was wondering how you're going to deal with that on a more priority basis. I think it's really dangerous to the community to allow that to happen. It would be better in the long run just to not be ready for the season, because those people don't live in Collier. We have to take care of our people first, and our people are going to get diseases because of this. And I hope I didn't use up more than my 3 minutes.
There's a little clock right there, and just as a matter of statement, just if it was printed that the priority is for cleanup in certain areas, that was a misprint. It was a misunderstanding. And again, I'm not debating. I'm just sharing with you. Our priority has to do with housing and taking care of our residents. And this is not a discussion back and forth on a what about
Okay,
thing. I'm just
fine.
sharing with you. If you read something like that, that was a misunderstanding. Commissioner Taylor?
I think I'll at least save this for my comments later, but I can tell you there are rats on Gulf Shore Boulevard
Right.
as well as in East Naples.
Sure.
So the idea that somehow the tension is to the people to get ready for the tourist season is incorrect. This is a very widespread. My district is the one that's the hardest hit of all the districts, except I think Andy's is pretty bad along the coast, but east of Airport and south of Radio Road is very, very bad. And we are doing all we can, but we have 145 or 49 trucks that have come in. I think we could probably do with a conversation from our, our public utilities about the status of it, and that'll be up to you, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to. But I don't see any favoritism. I drove up Creighton Road and down the streets yesterday, and believe me, there's a lot of stuff on the west side of this community.
That's right. Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you. I'm going to belabor this a little bit because it's really important that rumors not get started and that we deal with those types of rumors right away. The statement was made that there seems to be some priority to getting our businesses up and running for the tourist season, and that is just incorrect. And we're going to have a full report from Dan Summers here shortly on all of the reconstruction and restoration and recovery efforts. But I will tell you, I want the public to understand, the first priorities are always to make sure that people are safe, that they have a place to stay that's safe, that they have all the necessary food and water and protection from the Sheriff's Department. All of those things are really top priorities. And so I don't want anyone to leave here, or anyone that's listening, to think that we place a priority on getting a business open for the season place that more importantly than keeping our citizens and our visitors safe and giving them the things that they need to be able to survive the impacts of this storm. And so I just wanted to state that clearly, and we'll look forward to Mr. Summers and his report.
That's correct. Commissioner LaCastro.
I was just going to say, I had 2 town halls last night in my 2 hardest hit communities, Isles of Capri and Goodland. FEMA was there, and I had key county leadership that was there. And, these are communities that don't have palm fronds and branches in front of their houses. They have household goods, everything they own, and all their appliances. And trucks were out there in full force because they need to be. It's a dangerous situation when both sides of the road are piled with everything that they own. So I can just say a big chunk of my district is East Naples, and I'm impressed at how what a great job they've done. I see Carrie in the back. She came to my town halls last night and got basically a standing ovation from the people in those 2 communities that are well within the East Naples boundary. So I feel we're definitely hitting those areas that were hardest hit and getting rid of the piles of the right kind of thing. So thank you, Carrie, for all that you're doing, and your team, and Dr. George and everybody. So last night was very popular town halls. We really had a good show of force, and they felt like we were prioritizing, just fine. And the surrounding communities that only have palm fronds and branches, I got notes from them saying, we'll wait as long as we need to wait because we've seen the photos of some of the harder hit places. So people are starting to get it. Thanks.
Exactly. Well said. And it's, Commissioner Solis.
Just to belabor it some more, I think that staff, has their mission. They're doing a great job, incredibly responsive. But people live in District 2 as well. It's not that nobody lives there, and a lot of people live in District 2. A lot of people live in Naples Park and Vanderbilt Connors and on Gulf Shore. So staff has a big challenge, but they're up to the task. We've done this before. So I agree that what we don't need now are rumors that just add to the issues.
Absolutely. And that's the mis and disinformation can put us down a rabbit hole none of us need to go. If that was actually printed that way, it was a misrepresentation of the facts, period. So, Troy, who's our next speaker?
Your next speaker is Harrison Hubschman, and he'll be followed online by Colette Gorgas.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm here about the concrete crushing operation that we want to start on our property on the corner of Santa Barbara and Davis. As you know, we brought that material in about 1.5 years ago under ordinance number 2005-44, which allowed for recycling of concrete and crushing. And we lost our permit from South Florida in November, so we were told to shut down our crushing operation. We did. The material was supposed to be brought in for a certain period of time. It was brought in up to that point, and then we stopped as the commissioners at that point asked us to. And then, like I said, we started crushing. Then we were told to stop crushing in November. And then we went back and forth with South Florida about our permitting, about our permit. And we were roughly 2 months ago, or 3 months ago, we made application for a crushing permit from South Florida Water Management. We now have our permit and have had it for over 2 weeks, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks. And we're ready to go to work. I talked to Lauren Andrews today, who is with Earth Tech. He said he can have a machine moved in approximately 2 to 3 days. The machine is certified by DEP not to produce any dust and to meet with all their requirements for crushing and the operation. I know the one thing that you're concerned with is the residents nearby. When Bobby was trucking that material in, trucks were driving in, making lots of noise, dumping the material. That made a lot of noise, and it also made a lot of dust. And that occurred, like I said, in early 21 to, I believe, August or so, or September of 21 is when it stopped. And there were a lot of people in the residents nearby complaining about that. That was the material, that was the problem at the time, not the crushing operation, because the crushing operation got certified by DEP. Bobby was running it, Bobby Cadenhead, and it was not putting out any dust at all. And the machine was far enough away from those residents that it should not have been disturbing them as far as noise, because a crusher doesn't make near as much noise as the tailgates slamming shut on these trucks, and the concrete, coming out of the back of these trucks is very noisy. That is, not going to happen anymore. So we're looking, I heard that, I guess Commissioner LaCastro was concerned about the residents and they're, not wanting this crushing to go on. They want us to remove the material. If that were the case, you're talking about 700 truckloads of material, talking about $4 to $5 million, whereas we're going to take a material that would put I don't know how many, 100,000 cubic yards into your landfill.
Mr. Hubschen,
Yes.
let me interrupt you.
Sure.
I perceive that we're ultimately going to have a hearing on this. And
Oh,
so
okay.
Today's discussion is for you to come to us and tell us what it is that you're looking for.
Oh.
Commissioner LaCastro is lit up here
Yeah.
and has some comments. This is not a point in time in our meetings where we have discourse back and forth.
Oh, I'm not
with the
looking for that.
community. This is for you to state a fact, which you have.
Okay.
Thank you, by the way, for coming here.
Okay.
And then Commissioner LaCastro has something to say, and then I do as well, assuming he doesn't cover it.
Okay,
So,
I'm
no, there's no
I
sorries.
just wanted you to know we're ready to go to
When
work.
when the buzzer beeps at you red, your 3 minutes are up. So
Okay. We have our permit, we're ready to go.
hang on 1 second, don't go away.
At my pre-meetings yesterday that we all have for this meeting, I asked that Jamie Cook or somebody from that division later in this meeting give us a presentation on their recommendation. So they're aware you got your permit from the Water Management District, but I spoke directly to one of the top leaders of the Water Management District and said that permit doesn't get executed until it goes through the county, and then the county briefs all of us, because it's not just me that's concerned about this rock crushing lot. All of us have had a piece of it, and so we wanted to hear from our own staff what the Water Management District recommended, and what we like about what they recommended, what we don't, what our options are, so that we're doing this as a joint leadership effort, because this affects the whole county. It doesn't matter whose district it's in. It was in Commissioner Saunders' district, then we redrew the maps, it's in mine. We've we've all gotten emails on it. But I think that's where we are, so I don't even know if now's the time for you to, Jamie, to comment. But we have somebody here that's going to give us an overview, and then I think at a later date, I don't think it's going to be this meeting, we are going to provide direction to the county to give direction to you on what we're comfortable with you doing. And so, it hasn't been lost on us. And I actually added it to the agenda here informally today to discuss. So I'm glad you are here so we can all hear it at the same time. But I don't know that now's the time to hear from the staff, but we will be addressing it.
Now is not the time for
Yep.
staff on this, but the
Right.
attorney has a statement.
Should I,
I'm not entirely sure what the board could do at this point in time, giving the order of the special magistrate and the permit that's been issued. If you'd like, I can come back to the next meeting on executive summary and give you what options, if any, you might have on this. But I don't think you have any options at this point in time. I think they've got the ability to crush the rock or remove the rock, depending upon what they want to do.
I mean, I would just add that I think we have such a good relationship with the Water Management District, and they realize that this has been a hot topic, that I personally spoke to a senior leader that said, we've issued the permit, but we're not trying to force feed anything. So legally, maybe this is a little bit of a gray area, but all the parties that were on the Zoom, on the conference call that I was on said, hey, we leave it to the county now to take a look at what we've approved. And if you take exception to some of the things in here, we're ready to listen. We're not trying to force feed something.
At the board's direction, staff took this through the code enforcement process. They got a fine, I believe it was $1,000 a day.
Right.
And the special master ordered that they either start the rock crushing or they remove it. So it's up to them what they want to do at this point in time.
Okay. Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you. Mr. Klatzkow, you said something that I just wanted to get some clarification on, because if I was listening to it, if I was Mr. Hupsham and listening to what you just said, it sounded like they can go out today and start crushing this, or they can go out today and start removing it. That it's up, you said it's up to them on what they're going to do. So I want to make sure that we're saying what the facts really are. Can they go out today? Are they permitted under our ordinances and under the state permit to go out and start crushing?
I don't know if staff has issued the permit yet, all right? I don't know why they would be delayed at this point in time, because this is $1,000 a day, all right? But having said that, under the order of the special magistrate, they've got the option of either trucking it out or crushing it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think we do need to have some clarification as to what they can do today, because if they can go out and start crushing today, fine. But what's the status of the permit? And
Good morning, Commissioners. Jamie Cook, your Director of Development Review. When the operation was shut down, they were originally given the 90 days, which coincided with the expiration date of their site development plan. The site development plan expired in March of this year, so we have not issued the extension of that site development plan yet. Once they had obtained the permit and requested a pre-construction meeting from us, then we were going to extend the site development plan for the specified period of time to allow them to crush. I believe they just requested their pre-construction meeting yesterday, but due to hurricane response, we haven't had time to schedule it yet.
okay, so again, if I'm understanding everything, they make the application. It's a staff decision as to extending the permit, which you said you're going to do. They don't need to come back here for approval from the county commission.
Correct. The way
staff
our
driven
land
issue.
development code is written currently, yes.
Mr. LaCastro, is that consistent with what you're?
Well, in the conversations I was in, it wasn't just either crush the rock or don't crush it. It sounded like, and even with the Water Management District leadership on the line, that there were some possible options in between. I mean, one of the things that was even talked about is, and when we say remove the rock, anything that's already crushed, removing it would be ridiculous, in my opinion. I mean, like you said, effort, time, trucks and whatnot, it doesn't solve anything. But the amount of uncrushed rock that's on the lot, that was sort of the question. Is it worth continuing to crush all of that? My understanding after the phone call is there's more uncrushed rock on that lot than I think any of us fully appreciated. So when we were initially saying just remove what's uncrushed and call it a day, there's a lot. The rock was brought in faster, it sounds like, than it was actually being crushed, and that's sort of a problem. But when I was talking with Jamie, and Jamie jump in here, it sounded like, we were talking about things of, hey, is there a lot somewhere else where they can crush the rock and it's not as visible? And I mean, we were brainstorming certain things. So at least in the phone call I was in, it wasn't crush it or don't crush it, start today or don't start today. And even the Water Management District agreed that the latitude that we had at the county per our direction or our desires was a viable possibility. It wasn't just a black or white, yes or no. Is that, I mean, I may be oversimplifying, but we had some latitude in deciding what the best option was, not just a yes or no, crush or uncrush.
So, a couple of things with this. First of all, if we wanted to move it to a new site to have them crush it somewhere else, due to the ordinance, we'd have to find a site that met the code.
No.
So
I'm not saying
that's
the approved solution,
more
but
difficult.
in the brainstorming, that was one of the things sort of thrown out.
The other kind of hard part to this is that nobody in Florida really regulates rock crushing itself. The Department of Environmental Protection regulates the crusher and has requirements for the crusher, as Mr. Hubschman can attest to, but no one regulates the rock crushing activity itself, including our land development code.
Commissioners, this is no longer a commissioner decision to make.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
That's
is
the
that
crux of this discussion. This discussion is between the update of the site development plan and our staff issuing a permit to Mr. Hubsman to be able to do his
and they're
job.
complying with the special magistrate's order. Yes.
Well, and that's all, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah, but
Commissioner
but the part I would say is our job is to maybe do a better job overseeing what's happening there, because it's great that everybody else has approved a bunch of permits, but that's why this thing has dragged out. I'm not saying we didn't necessarily do our job, but this one is such a volatile issue that now we still want to have eyes on it. You know, the first question I would have for you, and I know we're getting it down a rabbit trail because this is just a comment, but it sounds great that you can bring in a better machine and there's no dust and okay, but how long would it take to crush the rock that's currently on there? And we also want to make sure no more additional rock is brought in. I mean, so, you know, there's a bunch of unanswered questions. This isn't the forum. I know the chairman would say that, and I agree. But those are the things we need to hear from our county staff. So, you know, my expectation was that you all would talk, and then we would hear from our county staff what's legal, moral, ethical, and actually smart, you know, to do on that lot,
Well,
and have a better timeline of what it's going to be, so there's no surprises.
Well, and as Mr. Klatskow said, there is an open code enforcement case where the property owner is accruing fines. The special magistrate did ask for, after the permit was obtained, they come back to the special magistrate to discuss the time frame of how long it was going to take. So whatever that time frame may be would be determined by him.
Right. And there again, if that's part of the magistrate's order, then that's part of the magistrate's order. You've got to go through the motions in order to accomplish that. Commissioner Saunders? Did you have?
I did.
Yeah. You weren't. I
Am
thought
I
you were.
off?
Yeah, you went away.
Well,
so.
thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. So what I'm understanding then is that the process by which we have struggled with on this commission for the last 2 years has evolved into a point where there's a special magistrate ruling, and there is accountability required by the magistrate from the owner of the rock crushing in order to put some parameters around it. And legally, we really don't have, Mr. Klatskow, the basis to do anything but watch staff work as they always have in a very ethical and efficient way, understanding that the legal aspect of this is the most paramount thing that we can do.
Correct.
Commissioner Saunders, you want to wait and let our county manager speak a second?
Sure. Of course.
So, County Attorney Klatskow suggested that in 2 weeks, we come back at the next board meeting to be able to explain the parameters under which they will conduct these activities on the site. That gives time for the applicant, as well as staff, to work through those details. That's how long they're going to crush during the day, what days of the week, how they're going to control the dust. It sounds like they've got a crusher, but we want to assure the public that we'll control the dust. Site control, no more material coming in, all of those parameters, as well as the conditions applied by the code case and the special magistrate. This gives them 2 weeks to lay out what they agree upon in order to be able to issue that site development plan extension and come to a reasonable expectation that we can then explain to the community. Because I think if it's going to be a noisy operation to load a bunch of trucks full of rock and ship them off the site, that may not meet the expectations of the community either. So there may be that happy middle that we're talking about, placement of the crusher, hours of operation of the crusher, those things. So we can, if the board is in agreement, we'll ask Jamie and her folks, county attorney and his folks, as well as the applicant, to work together to answer. We know those questions. They've been the same questions, and we'll be back in 2 weeks so that we can figure out how this proceeds.
Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's perfect, because my goal would be to have this material, quite frankly, the logical thing is to crush it on site. Make sure that those parameters that you talked about are complied with. But also, I think it's important to get this done as quickly as possible. I don't want to see us in the middle of January when we're in the middle of the season and everybody's back and we're doing the crushing. I understand it'll take probably 60 days. So if we can, in 2 weeks, when we have our next meeting, if we can resolve this and get it moving, that's the goal I would like to see.
And I think as a point of clarification, it isn't necessarily coming back for a decision from this board. It's more of a report on how you're making out, what you're doing. Are you doing what you're supposed to do? Have they fulfilled what they're supposed to do with their SDP updates and so on and so forth? And from a regulatory standpoint, what can we do to assist with the noise and the dust and so on? You are correct. The EPA is predominantly the only agency that has anything to say over a crusher, but we have things to say from a regulatory standpoint. We can stand there with one of our decibel meters and at the property line and see whether or not there's an excess amount of noise or dust or anything coming along. We as a government can, at the local side, can in fact do that. So I think we're spot on to where we need to be. Thank you for coming and sharing with us that you're ready to go forward. And I think if you have your pre-app meeting for your SDP approval, it's going to get moved forward.
Just to let you know, we did not bring any more material in after the date that we were specified to stop. And that was almost over a year ago.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that.
I wanted you to know that.
Thank you, Mr. Hubschman.
We obeyed all their orders.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mr. Chair, your next speaker under public comment is on Zoom, Colette Gorgas, and she'll be followed by Peter Klein, also on Zoom. Colette, you're being prompted to unmute your microphone if you'll do so at this time. And I'm waiting. Let me give Colette just a second here. Okay, now she's gone. So let's go to Peter Klein. Mr. Klein, you should be getting prompted to unmute yourself, if you will do so at this time. And I tell you what, while we try to get him figured out, let's call up our other speaker in the room, Jackie Kay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jackie Kay. I would like to share a story about a CEO who made some decisions that led to the bankruptcy of their company, and how such decisions that county leaders are making that will also lead to our not only community but our economy being destabilized because of a lack of affordable housing. So I'm sure most of you, you're going to be telling your age, you remember Blockbuster videos, right? So the CEO of Blockbuster had a meeting with Netflix CEO, and of course Blockbuster CEO does not recall the meeting, does not recall laughing off the offer, but Netflix CEO offered to buy Blockbuster for about $50 million. That never went through, and we all know that Blockbusters went bankrupt. So when we look at the community, we have many people in our community offering to help with affordable housing. But the issue that I see is that community leaders are not only not interested in building affordable housing, but I see some are blocking it. So a lack of affordable housing, you have to use circular reasoning. Lack of affordable housing, what does that look like in the community? The working class who are needed to keep the community afloat, keep our tourism, our businesses going, they're leaving the community. We have middle-class people leaving the community. But then when the businesses don't have enough employees working force, then some of them are closing down. When these businesses are closing down, that means it impacts the tourism industry. When the tourists see that their businesses' favorite restaurants are no longer working or having to reduce their hours, they're going to be coming less. We see a hurricane, They have no reason to continue coming to Collier for the next year or two until we rebuild. So the idea is the solution is affordable housing. And if, reality is you all are CEO of sorts, whatever district you're in, you're a CEO of that district. I don't see that you're making the right decisions to sustain, maintain our community overall. And I would say this as all leaders in the community, whether you're in a position or whether you're like me. I love our community. I am working day in and day out. I don't have a position. I'm not getting paid. I just do it because I love the people. I love our community. And I have the backbone to do what is best for our community. I put my ego aside. I put my selfish political ambitions aside and do what's best for the people, getting out into the community, meeting people, helping them, speaking to them. We have to do what's right for the community, not our own egos, our own political ideation or ambitions. Thank you all very much.
All right, Mr. Chair, we're going to go back and try both of our Zoom participants one more time, see if they'll come through. Let's first go to Colette Gorgas. She's using an older version of Zoom, so we're having a little bit of an issue with her. Let me see if I can track her here. Colette, you're being prompted to unmute yourself. All right, we will move back to Peter Klein. Mr. Klein, you are being prompted to unmute yourself, if you'll do so at this time. And I see nothing.
All right. Then this,
Okay, so that's it with the Zoom, folks.
And what I would like to suggest is I really like the opportunity for community members to be able to communicate with us via Zoom, but I want it tested before we come here for the show.
Oh, we are tested, sir. We cannot test therein.
In advance of the meeting,
Yeah.
someone can go online at 9 o'clock. We can set a rule that they got to be online and communicated with before we get into this process.
We are chatting with them during this process. We
Okay.
have checked it technically.
This isn't a chastise.
No,
This is just,
understand.
this has happened more than once.
Oh,
and
I know.
I would like for us to be able to, somebody to hit a button for us to be able to go when they're called on, so.
In the meantime, I've received 2 more slips for public comment, if that is okay with you.
Totally fine with me. And
First, we have
by the way,
Elizabeth Rady.
There is intermittence in the interweb at large right now, so it could just be the people not having power or internet at all. So
Elizabeth will be followed by Garrett Byrant.
I don't know. You didn't ask me about Garrett Byron. I didn't know he was one of the two.
Well, I think the hurricane took the FX or something. I know it's not here.
Okay. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
That's a good one.
Good morning, commissioners and staff. I wanted to read something that I had posted on Facebook, and it has to do with not only the hurricane crisis that we're going through, but the daily rental hurricane crisis, basically. This might not be popular, but I think it needs to be said. We all get so wrapped up in our own lives that it takes tragedy to bring perspective sometimes. As we look at the devastation and want to step up and help, most of us are doing this because we in some way have been affected by this hurricane. Perspective. Many have been living through and losing their homes daily from the rental hurricane. Yet very few have come to their rescue. In some ways, I think this hurricane has brought people in Southwest Florida back to what's truly important, and that's compassion for each other. The city and county officials aren't going to help you clean out the 4 inches of muck out of your flooded homes. It's the community, and they have rallied and showed that that's what they're doing. People coming together to help. Compassion last week would have got a laughing emoji. Today, those very same are depending on it. And many of those we are running out of town because we have raised the rent so high are the ones that we are now needing and depending on. My only hope is that through this tragedy, we start to realize that everyone plays a valuable role in our community, regardless of social or economic status. God's greatest resource is people, and we all need each other. One of the things that I have absolutely been amazed at is how the community is rallying and coming together to help. People that are facing eviction, that aren't even thinking about it, but they're raising money. They're coming up with as much supplies as they can carry to these homes, to these individuals whose lives have been devastated. Many of us have understood what it feels like to potentially lose everything and have no place to go. And unfortunately, this hurricane has caused some very wealthy people in different socioeconomics to feel the same helplessness and the same distraught and fear that we have been fighting for the last year. It is my hope that we can continue to look at each other in compassion and understand that we all need help. And that even though the 60-day ordinance was pushed somewhere, these tenants still need representation. They still need help.
Thank you.
Your final registered speaker for item 7 is Garrett Byrant.
For the record, Garrett FX Byrant, former executive vice president of Glades Incorporated, and my ex-brother-in-law spoke a few minutes ago. And the question I've got actually has to do with this element of public speaking, when you can get up and talk about nothing that has nothing to do with anything in the future. And the way it's structured, nobody knows who's going to get up and say what anymore. It's a perfect example. I rolled in here by half of my car running to make it to this meeting only because I thought something was going to happen here. And oddly enough, my ex-brother-in-law got up to speak about I call it the nightmare at Santa Barbara and Davis. That's rock crushing. I had nothing to do with Bobby Cadenhead's death, okay? And that's not a joke either. He accidentally got killed trying to pull a rod out of a machine that wasn't working properly, and it got stuck in his head and killed him. And that's why this thing went sideways to begin with. It. I gave him my house, and he moved it to the other side of town. It's all crazy. The bottom line is somebody should rewrite the speakers that get up to speak, what they have to speak about. If you get up and speak about anything, why would you get up to speak about something that wasn't going to happen? People are going to get up and speak about the hurricane. That's a general concept, unless it has to do with their own particular neighborhood, Naples Park, or whatever. The bottom line is that it's very confusing, and people like me, I wasn't going to be here this morning. Crystal called me up and said, hey, there's a meeting today. I didn't know that. Well, you might want to get up and speak about something. And then my ex-brother-in-law shows up to talk about the concrete nightmare. And I'm here like, what is going on? How come nobody knows what's going on? Because you let people get up to speak and it's not really on the agenda, and it maybe never be, who knows? But that's the problem I've got with dealing with the county, is that I'm never aware, unless I get up here every Tuesday or Thursday, I never know what's going on in this county anymore because of that one element. And I think maybe Jeff could reword that element that has to do with when you're public speaking, what you can actually say, if it's not on the agenda, or maybe is or was or will be. Is that confusing? Okay, good, because that's exactly how I was this morning. It's like, what are they talking about?
It's as clear as mud right here in print. So it's Commissioner Solis has something to say.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think that item 7 and now item 15 are like a box of chocolates.
Right.
You never know what you're going to get.
That's already been done, but that movie is very good. That was a good movie, wasn't it?
It really was.
I still have my legs. I was in the Army years ago and didn't lose
so
my
I
legs.
can say a point, you're here because of Crystal?
No, I was here. She wondered where I was because she hadn't seen me for a while. She thought I floated away. My cars did float away because I was in Wiggins Pass area. All the cars lifted up and like floated into the dumpster area.
Mr. LaCastro has something to say before.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just say this with all due respect, and especially as a veteran and as an American, this is called freedom of speech. So in other countries, they would edit what people were saying, or, you know, the attorney would meet everybody out in the hall and make sure that, you know, what they're saying made sense. Some of what you said just now didn't make sense to me, but you know what? I welcome your 3 minutes at the podium, but I think one of the most important things we do in here is give citizens 3 minutes at the podium to say whatever they want that's not on the agenda, and many times it does bring things to our attention. And I think even if somebody rambles for 3 minutes, you know what, it was important to them, and it's this free country that allows them to come to the podium and say whatever they want. So I think it's the most important thing on the agenda. And if 20 people come up to speak and 2 of them say something that actually changes something or brings something to our attention or what have you, then to me it was well worth sitting here for every single person that comes to the podium, even you.
Thank you very much. I think I'm out of time.
You are out of time.
Thank you.
And that is all the public comment we have at this time.
About that. So we got through that. Okay. Let's move on to, I think we're at item 11 now.
We are. That brings us to item 11A, update on the status of Hurricane Ian recovery efforts in Collier County. Mr. Dan Summers, your Director of Emergency Management, will present.
Commissioners, good morning. For the record, Dan Summers, Director of your Bureau of Emergency Services and Emergency Management. I have an enormous amount of information here today, and I'm going to do you the justice of not reading through every slide, but I have given you a lot of information to pass along, and maybe if we want to take questions towards the end. And as the Reverend said this morning, make no mistake, this has been a community effort. Our first responders, our Sheriff's Department, our utility folks that I now have deemed, or we deem as second responders, healthcare workers, the entire community, and I could spend the better part of the day recognizing those groups, and I don't want to overlook them, but let's just say it's been a tremendous team effort across the board, and you hate to see these events, but you also get renewed a little bit by the spirit and the camaraderie and the dedication to putting the community back together. And I'm so thankful to all of you for the support and an opportunity to be with those individuals. You've heard it today. We've recognized the loss of life, those that have been impacted so dramatically, and that's even a lot of our workforce, as we also will work through patience and compassion. These things do take time. Damage assessments, real quick, thanks to our Growth Management Division and Jamie's team. These are the numbers that we reconciled yesterday within the city of Naples proper, about $989 million, unincorporated area of Collier County, $948 million. And you see the breakdown there on commercial and residential. All that information has been passed along, of course, to the state and federal. One comment, you know, in this event that was not a wind event but a water event, it is not easy to tell from the street exactly what damage appears within. So they're looking at high water marks, best estimates, and then you certainly have vacant property. So this is a baseline. This is not a guarantee. Things will be uncovered in the days and weeks to come. We look at Marco with $256 million and Everglades City with $7 million. And again, we have seen such a contrast, if you will, in events between wind events and this being a high water storm surge event. And again, our gross totals here around the $2 billion mark. And again, certainly subject to change. I think to focus on recovery, you know, there are every item that we deal with is a priority. So I hate even listing them, but obviously job one, survivor and neighbor assistance, utility restoration, which has gone extremely well to those individuals that can accept power, debris removal, evaluating flood loss to our infrastructure, both in our commercial community and our private homeowners, making sure transportation resources, and right-sizing all areas of needs. And I think I want to stress to you that resources are thin, as they are during any of these events. Under the best of considerations, our goal is to address the whole community and do our best to meet those emergent needs and get started on those long-term needs. I want to comment a little bit about the Emergency Operations Center, and thank you all for coming by and checking on us from time to time. I think one big success, and again, we're not riding any white horses today, but I just want to share with you some things that were really incredible. Over 70 licensed beds with licensed medical facilities with 6,000 beds or more. Not one nursing home or rest home had to be evacuated during the key part of the storm. We've had one facility that's had a little bit of generator challenges that elected to relocate several days after landfall. But the generator bill that was put into place after Irma was an incredible situation there that made folks safer, put less strain on the medical community, and our human services group at the EOC were doing hourly checks on those facilities. Certainly more resiliency with the lift stations. Well, yes, we have some impacted, but a dramatic difference in the investment in generators and that program that Dr. Yelmez's team engages with. We requested from the state over 70 mission requests, and one thing I'm most proud of was our support from the state on fuel. I had been quite worried about fuel, and we not at one time did Collier County not have, or the cities, have the fuel that it needed for essential government operations, so hats off to our state partners. The FEMA ambulance strike teams were ordered up early, embedded with Chief Butcher's operation to expand our capability for ambulance care. Our thanks to Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, our generator and pump orders, although not all of them came in, but a lot of them did. And wanted you all to know, and you knew this from the beginning, where we could, we yielded resources to Lee County. We have a great working relationship with my colleagues Sandra and Patrick up in Lee County, and we continued to balance and right size to support those needs. We did about 80 internal operations within our group. That was borrowing, loaning, or supporting a fellow department or division, both within the city and the county. We made over 3,000 phone calls to our special needs clients and took really good care of them. Over 5,500 calls were received by the call center, thanks to Michael Brownlee, John Mullins, their team that took the time to answer questions and coach individuals along the way. Dozens of nonprofit organizations we managed quite well. We'll talk more about that. And the state of Florida had over 5,000 requests for assistance through all the counties impacted during Hurricane Irma. So there was a tremendous state lift. Recovery programs, and this is a very long list, and you need to know, and we have continued to stress, job one, register with FEMA at 1-800-662-FEMA. Get that individual assistance program registered. We have casework ongoing with our non-governmental organizations, NGOs. You'll hear that acronym quite a bit. We are plugged in daily with Red Cross and Salvation Army and so many other disaster relief groups who have brought strong horsepower into Collier County, both financially and volunteer manpower to assist so many folks in our community. FEMA is also making its resources available certainly for government, what we call public assistance, that's government, and nonprofits where they're eligible, and they have rolled out support to houses of worship as well under certain conditions. Small Business Administration is here in full force. Those programs, the full suite of programs that are open. In many cases, I want to stress that FEMA may ask an individual to make a call or make an application into SBA. SBA is one of the financing arms outside of the grant arm that FEMA may offer. So again, it is not unusual to have someone register for individual assistance and be redirected to the SBA. That's okay, continue that process. The next line of defense is Homeowners Insurance. We know lots of challenges to get up with your insurance agent. There are insurance villages. I know there's one right up here at Home Depot with Allstate and others, but again, communication is up. Make those calls to your homeowners insurance, your business owners. And certainly the National Flood Insurance has also turned on many expedited funding programs to get those impacted by flood some immediate relief. I'll bring some more information on that in just a minute. We encourage self-reporting on our website where we have a damage assessment portal. We welcome that additional information. Nonprofit groups. I'm very proud of Joshua Start on our team, who is our volunteer agency coordinator, who has really kept all of these groups from duplicating effort, keeping them on task. And we have also activated the crowdsource crisis cleanup site, which works extremely well, where individuals can request assistance and other relief groups connect on social media and begin that cleanup process. That's worked well. Our community and human service folks are reviewing the SHIP and HUD resources, and that's a state housing assistance program for repairs and maybe some pending HUD support in the program via the Economic Recovery Act. National disaster teams are, again, working with our volunteer group. We have FEMA has staffed in our Emergency Operations Center a volunteer agency liaison, and they work very much with the much larger disaster relief groups, as well as coordinating locally the NGO services that go to our disaster relief centers, our disaster registration centers. So I'm going to kill you with acronyms today. So the DRC, Disaster Response Center. And so we have those programs in place. We did go to battle just a little bit to make sure that Blue Roof was turned on for Collier County, and that is to not only help get those blue roofs on for drying in, but we also have the Corps here doing infrastructure assessments. I mentioned the non-governmental agencies that are working with us that have continued to do really, really good work here. And we've just seen we're seeing 6-digit reports on either manpower, supplies, and equipment that have been donated via our NGOs. And we're going to continue to rely on them to help so many folks. Give local, give wisely. Our community foundation in Collier County, as you all made a resolution and recommendations in the past, is our financial philanthropic arm. We know there are a lot of funds out there, but one of the plugs that I give here is that the money that comes in locally is immediately distributed locally in hours, not months or weeks from other organizations potentially. And then our other groups locally that we know are doing so much, everything from the hospital, Harry Chapin, Meals of Hope, Daily Bread, just to name a few. So again, I wasn't a great student in economics in college, but I do know that local dollars are important and local dollars roll and magnify into the community. And so we want to continue that financial engagement at a local level, and our community foundation is our foundation partner.
And just as an aside, because of the hurricane, they are not taking any payments. You know, sometimes when you donate to the community foundation, there's a service fee. All that is waived.
That is correct.
100% of the money that people donate go to the cause.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. And that's exactly one of the reasons we wanted to engage with a local philanthropic organization to avoid any of those fees or any absence of full disclosure. How to apply for Fema Aid. We've talked about the phone number. We've got the disaster recovery centers. Right now we have one at Veterans Park. We are waiting on more FEMA teams to come in. We have sites identified as soon as that manpower gets here. And some of these locations will be served by a large RV in other static locations. And I'm sure, Commissioner LaCastro, that was covered with your FEMA teams as well. They'll be canvassing, not only have been canvassing neighborhoods with boots on the ground, but will be bringing these mobile resources to support the community. We want to remind folks that it takes a little time to get through this process, so be patient. Work with the staff that you have an opportunity to meet with, whether it's boots on the ground or at these locations. return FEMA's phone call. The inspector has to make site visit with you. They'll do their best to make 3 or 4 calls to make an appointment, but stay engaged with them, and they will make sure that these services continue to roll forward. Our FEMA liaison was kind enough to provide us a little bit of data as of Sunday. Over 17,253 registrations have been made with FEMA, 9,000 of those with homeowners, 7,000 with renters. 11,000 individuals have been referred to an individual household program, which has a whole suite of resources and funding. $15.9 million has already been allocated in individual homeowners programming. So there is some cash relief that is moving today. $10 million in housing assistance, $4 million in rental, $6 million in housing repair, and $5.9 million in other unmet needs. For example, maybe a generator that's needed for oxygen support or medical refrigeration. And 28% of all inspections have been completed. So, we all want it yesterday, but this is very, very good progress in terms of what's being done to put some financial relief into the community. And by no stretch are we done, but I think this is a very, very good progress report just a few days after the storm. The transitional housing assistance is where FEMA does look at providing hotel rooms as an option, and that program is available. But frankly, this is going to be a tough go because of the number of hotels that were impacted already, and they will work in the entire region for those rooms if appropriate. So the good news is the program is there. The difficulty right now is that there's not many hotel rooms, but as they become available, they may certainly provide an option. And other housing programs are frankly being evaluated by the state and FEMA right now in terms of what other options might be available. And it is terrible that Lee County had the impact that they did, but make no mistake, it is typical that whatever is turned on for Lee County will also be turned on for an adjacent county, and that's us as well. So lots of big picture discussions going on right now for mid and long-term recovery strategy via FEMA and the state. The debris removal team, Carrie's group, is here in case you have any questions, and she provided some highlights to us yesterday with the amount of hauling units now at 140 and I think growing every day, and just an enormous volume that's being picked up now. So they are keenly aware with GIS resources, monitoring resources, tracking the movements, and getting all these materials continuing to move. So certainly an incredible lift here just a few days into the operation. A little comparison, I thought this was a great analysis by Carrie's team as to what we had for horticultural waste during Irma versus what we expect during Ian, and then of course the difference in construction and demolition debris and time to collect and estimated cost. This is certainly subject to change, and we know that people are bringing more goods out as they have an opportunity to work on cleanup, but certainly a very fluid picture here. Excellent information here in terms of the, I think what it stands out to me is landfill tons at this particular point, day 7, with 130,000 cubic yards of debris, 2,718 loads, and still has other routine household pickups and operations going on. Little outline here of what Carrie's team has set forth in terms of the deployment of the trucks, the public health concerns. This team is keenly aware of that. We continue to have conversations with our administrator at the Florida Department of Health here locally, continue to make sure that the recycling drop-offs remain open so we can keep that out of this particular waste stream as well. And then finally, the big commercial debris. What is on private property? That is a big risk for the county until FEMA gives that approval. Collier County's debris removal package amendment, if you will, to FEMA for the commercial debris, which is basically anything to the right of the right-of-way. Collier County's package is in. It's being reviewed by FEMA. We were the first package in, and I think the philosophy there is that a little frustrating, but the FEMA wants to try to get a handle on the entire financial picture of everything from boat removal to car removal to construction and demolition debris inside of the right-of-way. So they have a task force looking at this, and we want to get this right on the front end so it doesn't put the county in any unnecessary exposure on the back end. But the good news is her team is ready. And again, this is typical process to get some of these waivers from FEMA because it is a substantial financial undertaking and it takes a little time. And I'm sure Carrie can add more to that. I want to mention about communications next, and I couldn't be more proud of the social media team. I've always contended that that was a critical pipeline of information, and to take a look at 5.5 million engagements and impressions on social media, 440,000 discussions on Ian in terms of social media engagement as well. 5 impressions and engagement, a conversation or a hit. 877 posts about what we were doing to move forward or correcting information that may have been out on social media. Our evacuation notices are listed there in terms of the hits and the engagements that we received on evacuation notices. So, you know, this has become the new forum and the new media, and the new media release today is really social media engagement. Finally, I think that it was also important to note that over 55 news releases were put out, and that was covering everything from evacuation and shelters and our alert Collier and debris removal and those type of things. So we have John Mullen's team has really worked very hard to get communications out to the community. Paul and his team were with us during landfall, and they've been invaluable. The hotels that were reported yesterday open and operational were 53. 39 of those were unreachable. Their confirmed return to operations, 11 are unavailable as to when they may return, and the sites that are closed pending imminent opening are 12. So Paul and his team made some site visits to a lot of these locations, checked in on them, and they are all very anxious to get reopened, and certainly many have been very accommodating to first responders and essential emergency employees, as well as some other situations where housing was needed. Road and Bridge, tremendous activity here. Not only started with pre-landfall engagement, the donation of sand materials so that sandbagging operations were available to the community for the first time. Moving supplies and equipment, helping our operation with a little bit of forklift activity, working with the Sheriff's Office on closures, and working with the South Florida Water Management District on drawdowns. So all of that went extremely well, and if we can remember what our canals looked like a couple of days before landfall, that drawdown was quite substantial. Activities as they went the first day or so, power lines down, trees down, roadways being blocked, working on drainage systems, and that is so very important to get these drains cleaned, at least do some initial cleaning, and then do some follow-up with some long-term cleaning so again we can keep water moving. Many times our crews were tagged up with Florida Power and Light, working safely together to gain access, not only to address drainage, down power lines and trees, and work on restoration. And there was in North Carolina, we used to call that a wolf pack, and we'd put our utility folks together in a big team, and they would hit those areas and do some reopening. The Removing of the muck, again, I mentioned about these storm drains that need to be open, clearing these other drains, and road maintenance working in various locations, not only to help power up some generators and signals, which generally did very well with a lot of our signals, with the exception of a few cabinet losses, and we had more than enough portable generators on site to get those intersections repowered. So that worked extremely well this time. Wastewater operations, just again, a huge lift compared to Irma. With the pumper trucks that arrived, the portable generators that we had on hand, the fixed generators that have been installed since Irma. High water impacted a lot of these lift station controls and pump station controls. They're reporting 42 panels need to be replaced, but in the meantime, there's portable equipment there. Pardon me. And then finally, the contractor who is working on restoring flow, installing bypass pumps. The large diesel pumps are on site to keep wastewater moving, and there are 10 locations that will have some additional work pending. Finally, I just want to leave you with a quick discussion on mitigation opportunities. Collier County, there's typically funding available after one of these events to work to break the damage repair cycle. Our group has been very focused on that with Irma funding. That's how you got a lot of the generators and other infrastructure resources to break that. And we don't have any idea what that mitigation program will look like yet, but it is an opportunity that we'll work hard on to address the damage repair cycle with all infrastructure resources under review. So a quick highlight there, and thank you for your patience, and I'll certainly answer any questions that you have.
Commissioner Taylor, we'll have you go first.
Thank you. The question has come up again and again with gated communities about debris removal from within the gated community. As I remember in Irma, the debris has to be put on the public right-of-way outside of that gated community. Is that the way it is now?
Let Carrie come up and give you some detail, but we have worked, and her team has worked very hard to ensure that we had the correct right of entry agreements in place, which they have done, as well as presenting that package to FEMA. So maybe Carrie might want to comment a little bit more on that.
Hi, we're still awaiting, for the record, Carrie Hodson, Director for Solid Waste Management. We're still awaiting the FEMA package approval for permission to go into the gated communities, but we do have over 800 right of entry signed, which is impressive compared to in Irma. We went into it with 300. So we're ready as soon as we receive word. And in areas where there's life, health, and risk to safety, we can go into those areas.
Like trailer parks?
We're still awaiting for FEMA reimbursement approval, but yes, if we prove life, safety and health, we will be in those areas.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anybody else have any comments for Mr. Summers?
I just have a quick question. I think I know the answer, Dan, or maybe for Carrie. When you look at your debris removal comparison, Irma versus Ian, during Irma we had 6 management sites. This time we have 1. Is that more of an efficiency thing, or obviously, you can tell we had much more vegetation debris during the windstorm than we had for this one. But that's just the only number that sort of just begs a little bit of an explanation, and I'm sure the answer is a smart one. Not that we cut back or what have you. What's the reasoning there? Is it a more efficient process?
It's not oriented around efficiency. The challenge comes in is we have 10 times more construction demolition debris in this storm than was in Irma. A lot of these debris sites are permitted for vegetation waste. Construction and demolition is a whole different animal. So when it comes to the space, the eyesore that this brings, it's much different, as well as the FDEP requirements. That's a lot of the challenge that we've faced with this. What we've did to compensate for that is we've had additional trucks came in. As a matter of fact, we have 10 more coming in today to try and assist with the one location of the site. And we continue to try and find areas that will allow a construction and demolition process.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Saunders.
I just want to take a moment to thank Dan Summers and the entire team. All of us spent quite a bit of time over at the Emergency Operations Center immediately following the storm. And you have a very impressive operation. But what was most impressive to me is you've got, and the public needs to know this, you've got 30 or 40 stations at the EOC with people representing the hospitals, representing the sheriff's department, the local cities, the local police departments. Every organization that would be involved in storm recovery is in that location. And you would have your meetings where you would have the entire group, one by one, explaining what their situation was with what their tasks were. And what was impressive was your knowledge of every task that every one of those 30 or 40 people had to perform. And I just want to thank you for that. We are truly blessed to have a really great emergency operations team. That goes for all of the teams and the Sheriff's Department, all of the departments working really well together. It was really impressive. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of the entire community, you and all of the county staff and all of the deputies and law enforcement personnel that were involved in this. Just really impressive.
Well, thank you, sir. And every time I have said this is a team and this is a community, and we're very, very fortunate to have a great team. I have a great partner in law enforcement with the sheriff and all of the ancillary duties he's supported us with. And we know there's a lot of work here ahead, and we understand that, and we think our framework, our plan is in pretty good shape, and we'll have to adjust and modify. And I thank you for the patience, because we know this. We're ready to fix it today, and we have to take this big animal one bite at a time, and we'll continue to do that.
And one other comment and a bit of a question. I know our Sheriff's Department, the fire departments, they all have interlocal agreements, and I know that there's a tremendous amount of effort from Collier County assisting our brothers and sisters up in Lee County, especially in the islands that were devastated by this storm. I'm wondering if there's something that we can do that is above and beyond what is ordinarily expected. We expect our staff to be able to assist with things such as building permit applications and processing that type of stuff in other communities. But I'd like to see if the commission is willing, and if staff could come back to us fairly quickly on, are there some other things that we can do that are not necessarily customary? So, for example, I was meeting with some folks last night, getting cots and blankets and tents to people that are literally homeless, that are sleeping in their yards right now. Getting those types of supplies to these folks. These supplies are being donated. I'm wondering whether we can perhaps assist with providing some of those types of supplies in terms of either cash or in terms of actual acquisition of those types of things. I'll give you another example. I know we have a tremendous amount of storm-related equipment and things for our evacuation centers. Well, we may have another storm in a week from now, but there are people that need that type of stuff today, and I'm wondering if we can perhaps go above and beyond what is normally expected.
Yes, sir. And let me comment on that just a little bit. Our Human Resources Department, Amy Lieberg, is certainly working on our county employees, as we have many that lived in Lee County and took severe impacts. So Human Resources is trying to help there and do some evaluation. Lee County is doing similar. My counterpart up there, Sandra Tamfaye, Sandra and I are connected almost daily. State resources that may have come for our event, we immediately demobilized, and they went back to a staging area in Lee County. So the equipment that Lee County may need for their operation has been certainly reappropriated and or reassigned. So they are not, at this hour, not wanting for anything, but we have a constant visibility and that's what we call a mission, or we can redirect a mission. So our mass casualty ambulance bus, for example, is an aid station on Pine Island today. So our mass casualty ambulance bus and our EMS personnel have been on site right after the event. So that's one contribution we've made from the county. I know the sheriff and other law enforcement, when they've had resources available, have supported them. So a lot on the public safety and emergency management side, that's automatic for us because we always share within the region. And the other thing is that we know that as our human resources department maybe have some conversations, we can help it. When those needs get identified, we will all work with our nonprofits, or I'll come to the county manager and bring that need and bring that opportunity. And again, a lot we can do with we can move commodity. We've got the capability to move supplies and equipment. And just as soon as that gets validated, we'll find that we'll source it, whether it's county or private or financial, and we'll source it and put that out. And it's amazing how the nonprofit organizations have fallen into lockstep with us for supply and equipment ordering and mission deployment and those type of things. So I think you're absolutely spot on. And to let you have some comfort, we have a system that we can turn on instantly as soon as that request is validated.
Then I guess the only comment I would make is, first of all, I'm glad to hear all of that. If you think of anything that we can do above and beyond that, would require county commission approval, that would require expenditure of funds, that would require some budget amendments, that type of expenditure would be in the public interest, especially with all of the large number of employees that we have up in Lee County. So just if there's something that comes to mind, I think that this commission, it is certainly my hope that this commission would be very generous in trying to help folks. Obviously, we have to take care of our Collier County residents. That goes without saying. But I think it would be important to do a little more, if we can, in Lee County, just because of the total devastation in some of those barrier islands, Sanibel, Captiva, Fort Myers Beach. The devastation there was really just about total.
Yes, sir. Very good. Happy to do that. And again, I know that the sheriff and I have had conversations about his workforce impact, and certainly our human resources department is looking at that. And our fire service, we've had conversations with our fire partners. So absolutely, we'll come back with those opportunities.
Thank you.
For you.
Commissioner Solis.
Yeah, and I will echo everything that Commissioner Saunders has said. And for anybody that hasn't been to the Emergency Operations Center, it's an amazing place to see, but it's even more amazing to see when unfortunately it has to be opened up and staffed. It reinforces my feeling that we have the A-team for things like this. Fortunately and unfortunately, we have the A-team for this. But the one thing that I was going to ask is, and I assume that Commissioner Taylor and Commissioner LaCastro get the same kinds of questions and confusions, and it adds to the rumors and misunderstanding that's out there, is about power and how you get your power turned back on. I think at this point most probably are have their power turned on, but unlike the prior storms, that was the damage to the FPL infrastructure was mainly just the power lines. This involves things that are interior people's homes to condominium buildings. If we could just explain that twice so that it's clear, because this is, I think, the area where there's the most confusion and the most misunderstandings, and I think this is a great graphic of what are the steps that an individual homeowner and a condominium association needs to go through to get their power turned on, because what people see is FP&L's working out here, but they won't turn the power onto the building.
That's correct. And I'll talk about this just a little bit, and then Jamie is here, and I'll let him talk to you a little bit about that permitting process. But obviously the concern here is what you can denote is what's in green. Green is the homeowner's responsibility. So if the meter received water, or the post, the riser post that receives an above-ground power line is damaged, that is a customer responsibility. That's the property owner. So from the meter to the street, a meter intact to the street is FP&L or Lee Co-op. That's as far as they are allowed to go. Therefore, if your meter or your mast riser or your underground service had damage, then you have to call an electrician and get that addressed. So their responsibility ends at what we call the meter head, or sometimes we call it the meter can. The nightmare here, again, you said it exactly right, Commissioner. It was not a wind event. This is the rising water, and we all know that salt water and electricity just don't get along. So this is where anything beyond the meter that may go to other, let's say for a condo, goes to other electrical switchgear, then FP&L, for obvious safety reasons, and Lee Co-op, they cannot energize because you can generate loss of property and loss of life. So that mast and that meter and needs to be safe and ready to receive power, and making sure that throughout the rest of the building, saltwater intrusion has not potentially damaged that equipment. And Jamie can talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, and so just to try to put it in kind of everyday terms, so even though the power may be on down the street,
Correct.
a homeowner or an association has to have their infrastructure, their power panel, their breakers and all that inspected. It's on them to call for that.
That is correct. It has to be ready to receive, and that also requires an inspection. And again, all in an abundance of caution and safety, that we don't energize something that something could go south real quick.
Sure.
And then after Jamie, we're going to go to a court. There's still a lot more to talk about. But we're at the 10:30 bell. So, Jamie, you want to go ahead and wrap this up, and then we'll take a court reporter break for 10 minutes and then come back and address some of these other questions.
Yes, sir. I'll be brief, and then I'm going to introduce you to your building director.
What's his name?
Richard Long.
I'm joking, I know.
So, Commissioners, for the record, my name's Jamie French. I'm your interim department head for growth management and community development. So with this, we are bound by the Florida Building Code. And so under 468, your Florida statute, it says that your building official who is licensed by the state of Florida shall always faithfully enforce and administer your Florida Building Code. When it comes to your electrical service provider, they're the ones that make the call. And Rich can talk a little bit about that. But when they have deemed a structure requires an inspection, it has to be done by a licensed electrician.
And the providers you're talking about, either FP&L or LCEC?
It is their yes, they put the requirement on the property. They either notify the property owner, their customer, or they notify us, in which case we have put out a number of public service messages. But I'm going to let Rich talk a little bit about it. Just a little bit about Rich. Rich is a master electrician. He's licensed. He's also your building director, and has worked in both for NCH, for large companies, but he also owned his own electrical. He was an electrician here in town for probably 20 plus years. So Rich, if you don't mind.
Good morning, Richard Long, Director of Building Review and Permitting. Back in Wilma in 2005, we established a program to get electric reinstated quickly. So what we do is we have the electrical contractors will go in and do a safety check of the electrical services. They will then email us a letter on their letterhead that's notarized for authenticity, and then they deem that service to be safe to re-energize, and then we communicate that to FP&L and LCEC. And then if they actually need to repair, replace any electrical equipment, damaged equipment, a permit is required, but the Florida Building Code allows us to issue an emergency permit, which means they can start the work and get going, and then we'll actually do the inspection when they're complete and notify the power company, and then the permitting aspect of it can follow the next day.
So we're expediting that whole process as fast as we can.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's, again, to intentionally be repetitive, because as of even last night, I've been getting emails and calls from folks along Gulf Shore that, FP&L won't turn their power on. Why won't they turn their power on? And it appears that most of it is they haven't taken this first step to hire a licensed electrical company to come in, do this safety check, and then communicate that to the county.
Since this was a surge event and not a wind event, the inundation of all of the switch gear and all of that in the larger buildings on Gulf Shore is a little bit more problematic. So it really needs to be isolated, checked, and then confirmed that it is safe to turn on.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Commissioner, did you have a question for them, Commissioner Taylor?
Just a quick, and gentlemen, help me with this, but I think certainly the emails I'm getting is, I've been elevated. My house is elevated. I don't know about the man next door who I look down on, but my house is elevated. I'm according to FEMA code. I don't have any damage. Why can't I turn this on? And so I think it's really a situation where people who have built up are finding that they don't have power. And I guess you've explained it, but I know that that's part of it.
Yeah. Let's do this. Let's set aside the conversation with regard to power, because there's still more to be discussed. I have comments that I would like to make, but I'd like to honor our sheriff for 5 minutes. Be still, don't go away. He has duties to perform, and I'd like to bring our sheriff up and have a update from him, and then we'll go to our court reporter break, and then we'll bring back Jamie and Rich and grill them on the power.
Morning, everyone. Kevin Rambos, Collier County Sheriff. Thank you for giving me just a minute to give you a quick update relative to operations, because you have played a big part in the operations that have been put in place through the curfew. I'd like to touch a little bit on that and the importance of it. First of all, the tragic events to the north of us, we are doing everything that we can do, and we'll do as much as we can do, as Commissioner Saunders said as well, and the rest of the board. So our hearts go out to them. I will tell you that I've been here 44 years, and in Collier County, this is the most devastating storm that we have ever had. We've had in the past a lot of horticultural material, and it looked much worse, but the impact to our residents is much, much worse, particularly Zone A, all the way from Bonita Shores down to Everglades City. And the director gave a comprehensive review of what is being seen throughout the county. But I'm going to continue to ask our residents to help us. As Commissioner LaCastro said in his group, many people who have not seen the kind of damage that Zone A has seen, they are very willing to get the resources to those areas. And that is great to see, because we continue to work this. Just to give you some idea, on the day of the storm and a little bit slowing down after that, 5,000 911 calls that we responded to. 100 rescues that we responded to. We've made curfew, which I want to thank and recognize you for. That's a difficult decision to make, because we want to support our residents' ability to get where they need to go. We want to support our businesses, our restaurants, to make sure that they can operate effectively. But I'm going to tell you, over the last several days of this curfew that has been put in place, we have had throughout the county thousands and thousands and thousands of people come. Most of those people have come here truly to assist and to help us rebuild. I'm going to tell you that not all of them have. And we have been setting up a variety of programs to address the mass amounts of people coming in here that are coming into neighborhoods that are scaring residents to death, and to engage in criminal activity. And I'll tell you, since the curfew has been in, just a couple of examples of what we've been able to do. I'm going to say and ask of the public, there's no reason for you to be out between midnight and 6 a.m. in Zone A with the amount of property damage that is out there. We have found people roaming. We have made arrests. We had, in the first couple of nights, 19 arrests. Of those, or 13 arrests, of those, 9 were felons, from everything from child molestation to armed robbery and burglary, and they were not here to help. We had 4 individuals that were felons and gangbangers from New Orleans that were arrested, and they were not here to help. So the support that you have given us to enable us to have a curfew has absolutely worked. We've been working with the county manager, we've been working with the chairman, we've been reviewing the data, the need. We are scaling that back, there's no question. But there are still some areas that we need some help in. And for the most part, the public has been very supportive. We understand that. We're going to try and balance that all out. But we are still some time away from, well, normalcy is going to be years for Zone A. That I can tell you, that you already know. 2 last things. We have put in place an enhanced safety and security plan for Zone A, for that whole region from Bonita Shores down to Everglades City, with additional staffing. We had on, for the last 3 weeks, 1,000 of our members. If I didn't recognize them, I want to recognize the men and women of the Collier County Sheriff's Office for doing a fabulous job. Naples Police Department, Marco Police Department, all our fire rescue districts, all our city fire departments, emergency management, and EMS, because we have all been out there responding to these calls. And I think it's important that our community knows just how great, as you've said, all of those first responders are. And the term I just heard, our second responders, our utility staff, they are fabulous, because they are going to help us to move forward. So just a quick little overview. We will continue to put in place programs. Our second, after our community and safety plan, enhanced plan, we did our community reassurance plan, going into neighborhoods, setting up on streets, asking people what they need. I would just again ask the rest of our community, those who were not impacted, please understand we still have a lot of calls for service in the impacted area.
Thank you. Commissioner Taylor, did you wish to speak to the sheriff, or was that from before?
That is from before.
Okay. Commissioner LaCastro, did you wish to speak to the sheriff before we go?
Just say something after. It's not specifically for the sheriff. It's
okay.
Well,
let's thank you. I want to say thank you to you, sir, for you and yours and all that you've done for our community. That goes without saying.
Your staff great as well.
Let's go ahead and take
Can I just add my quick comment? Just with Dan here and the sheriff and everyone, I mean, I won't go through everybody that's been thanked because we know fire and the EOC, but one little nugget of superstars was the 311 operators. Most of them were librarians, and if you went into the 311 room, 0 calls they got were, thank you for all that you're doing a wonderful job, and just wanted to say, have a nice day. I kind of jokingly said, I think all those operators need to be drug tested, because they all had, and I say that tongue in cheek, their attitude was amazing. And Dan, I don't know how many thousands of calls they took, but they relieved so much pressure, answered so many questions. Over 6,000. We tried to do a really good job making sure that 911 wasn't the default number when you just had a question. But I mean, they took some very big questions and, and some ridiculous ones too. People calling, asking, when's the Bonita Springs Kia dealership open up? That was an actual call. But those ladies and gentlemen that were in that room were really superheroes, manning those phones 24/7. So, and a lot of them, they weren't professional operators. I was shocked to find out that most of them work in our public libraries. So, thanks to them. And that was a big, important node of the EOC that was sort of behind closed doors, but relieved a lot of pressure and answered a lot of questions.
Very good. We'll be back at 10:55. Thank you, Sheriff.
Chair, you have a live mic.
Yes. If everybody could, we can't really do anything. You got a few seconds here, minutes till my colleagues get back. Well, there's one. So as soon as there's three of us, we're going to resume. So if everybody please would wind it down and go to your respective spots. So, Commissioner, our county attorney says we can't conduct business till there's three of us up here. So.
Here comes one.
Do what? Yep. There we go. Now we're ready to go. Let's, well, Commissioner Solis and Commissioner Taylor will be back in a few minutes. I just would like to, we kind of left our Jamie French and Rich, if you fellas would come back to the podium. I'd like to just go through the reestablishment of power process for, I think Commissioner Solis jokingly said for the third time, but it might be for the 50th time. It is a rather daunting task for people that don't know how the systems in fact work. The county goes out and does an initial storm assessment, damage assessment, basically not an inspection, but we drive by and see a water line on somebody's house, and it's determined that they're marked as having received flooding, at which point then the power company is notified of those addresses, and then the power company in the re-energizing process requires those homeowners to bring in an electrician to certify that the property is ready to be energized again. And they won't turn on that home until a private electrician is brought in and certifies that that home's prepared.
Correct.
Okay. And for those of us who didn't know, I didn't know that was the case. This is as has been stated, this is from a flooding and standpoint, this is the worst storm we've ever had, and I've been here for 41 years, so I wasn't aware that there was a requisite of a private contractor that had to come when you receive flooding to certify that your home was ready to receive power. So if you could just go through that process one more time.
Sure. Again, for the record, Jamie French. Commissioners, so we use the FEMA damage assessment tools to make determinations on the level of damage. What FP&L chooses to use, or LCEC chooses to use, their private utility provider. In this particular case, it appears that they have chosen to use our data based off of our field assessments that are required to go to the state and to the federal government. As the electric service provider, and in my conversations with both agencies, they've chosen to use this data, so there is an assumption that the branch circuitry was affected. So whether or not your home was elevated or not, and we use that rule of 18 inches. The Florida Building Code talks about 12 inches. We've kind of stretched this.
18 inches of
18 inches would equate to major damage, sir.
of flooding.
Of flooding. So the best we have is that outside water line. Whether we're walking a community or driving a community, clearly you can see that silt, or the for lack of a better term, that water line that you can clearly identify on the outsides of the buildings. We do not know what has happened inside of that structure. But using that FEMA tool and then making that information available, we believe that that's how the power provider has made those assumptions. And in many cases, more cases than not, they were correct. There is branch circuitry that's either remains downstairs, and without an electrician coming along and either inspecting that or properly locking that out and giving the power provider some level of assurance that this has been locked out or it's safe to re-energize. I would also address that we have waived this permitting requirement where typically a permit would be required. We're simply relying on a letter from an electrician because it is private property. We need that electrician to state that they are properly licensed, and that would be in adherence to the Florida Building Code. We simply make sure that we review it. We make sure that it's consistent with the law. We forward it immediately. Even over the weekend, we had 3-4 electricians or electrical plans reviewers working on call and monitoring our email Dropbox 24 hours a day. And we also had a call center that we stood up over the weekend to make sure that we got this message out and put out some messaging even online and in paper. So that's really what we've seen from the electric service provider. And we're still, again, staying consistent with the code. But I believe they're really, their concern is that they've started to re-energize certain communities, especially in Lee County. We've seen a number of house fires.
Right.
Because when you have that level of inundation, whether or not the breaker box went underwater or whether or not it was impacted by water, perhaps we don't know what the situation is in the home and how old the home is. And it has been associated with fires. And the electric service providers made it very clear to us that they don't want that level of liability. So they do have the authority to come back and say, as our customer, we will not re-energize you until we know that it is a safe structure. And this is the only way we know how to do it. And it's in adherence with the law.
Very good. Thank you. While I have you here, I would like to talk about fees in regard to and requisites for permitting for reconstruction. I know, if I recall, one of our days at the EOC, we had administratively lifted the height for removal of drywall, and there was a requisite for permitting.
We waived the permitting requirements already for the demolition portion. Typically, you would have a demo permit.
Does this board have to back you up and say that that's okay, or are you going to take that one on the chin?
Sir, that is again, and the reason why I point out 468 is that is the call of your building official who is state licensed by the state of Florida. That's who he answers to.
We got you.
So he made that call, and we're appreciative of that because it allows, we wanted all the wet stuff out of the house.
Right.
Jamie, I'm sorry. Would you please explain, because you educated me yesterday on the code and who is ultimately responsible for enforcing it? We are, but where does it come from, state or local? Can we fudge things here? I think people need to understand that.
So in a typical building environment, your building official at all times is licensed by the state of Florida, and it says that he shall faithfully interpret and enforce that code. And there's some important words there that the state statute uses, without interference. So it is on that license holder from the state to interpret and enforce that code. In this particular case, we have leaned on them. But when you get into what FEMA would refer to as substantial damage as a result of a natural disaster, there is a 50% document that is required by FEMA and by the state of Florida and the Florida Building Code, where they have to demonstrate that the cost to reestablish occupancy pre-storm, so it doesn't necessarily need to be granite countertops, it doesn't need to be high-end finishes, but it needs to be a cabinet, it needs to be a countertop, they need to be able to live, to cook, to clean, to occupy the structure. That needs to be less than 50% of the improved value of the structure. And in the event that it is not, then at that point, then we get into a different discussion. And I believe only the Florida legislation or the governor could waive that requirement. But that gets into some insurance discussions on reinsurance. It also could potentially affect your overall risk rating when it comes to reinsurance of your community. So it looks at a number of things to include repetitive loss properties. It includes the reconstruction, because we recognize that some of these areas, the Florida Building Code did its job. Even when we look at Vanderbilt with the breakaway walls, they were designed to break away. But when we walk that community, the pile caps, the pilings, everything was intact. We're not really talking about demolition of buildings as much as we are the reconstruction. And there is a cost that is associated with that, with a 50% rule.
Occupiability. Yeah, you and I talked about that as well. Commissioner Solis.
Yeah, just to try to help people get a sense of how things are going to go. And I know the answer to this is probably, well, that's kind of up to FP&L, but once a homeowner or an association provides you the letter, we're processing those 24/7. What's your ballpark on how long from that point where that's communicated to FPL to where the power comes back? And these are just the questions that we get from especially Gulf Shore, all along Gulf Shore is, how long is it going to take?
I'm only aware of one or two, and it took 2 days after they received our letter.
And that's a pretty fair assessment. The grid system, there were subsurface infrastructure circumstances with the flooding and the power company's capacity to supply. Your house might have gotten designated as having received floodwaters, at which point then you're required to get an electrician to come and certify that you're okay. And well, FPL, your house might be energized with 3 of your neighbors. Your meter and box are at 11, 12 feet, and your neighbors are older homes. And as Commissioner Taylor said, you're looking down on those people. Their meters are at 5 feet or 6 feet. And then FPL has to go back and then individually isolate your home away from typically who would be turned on during that energizing process. And that, again, takes some additional time as well. That's some of the complications that the power companies are running into with the individual. Even though you're sitting there ready, got your letter, Rich has responded, FPL knows it, they have to go and individually isolate your home so it can receive the power so it doesn't energize someone else's mistakenly. Typically, it would come from the transformer and go to 3 or 4 houses.
And then one other rumor that's out there is that we're keeping FP&L from energizing buildings and things after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. That we have some kind of curfew that relates to FP&L workers, and that's just not true either, right?
They've been around
So-
the clock.
So utility service providers are protected, or they're spoken about within the Florida statute, and we do not regulate them.
Right. So
Even at a local level.
that's a rumor out there that I've heard, and that's why it's taken so long. That's not true. FP&L is working 24/7.
They pulled back a little bit Sunday when the big storms came in on Sunday just because of inclement weather and the safety of their workers, but that had nothing to do with the government doing, or county doing anything with them.
Just coming westward on Davis Boulevard, and this was maybe 3 or 4 days after the hurricane, I counted 13 Florida Power and Light trucks coming out of a side road into the road. 13. I mean, but it's not just that, it's Pike, it's a lot of them. They're here and they're doing all our support system.
And people need to appreciate how dangerous that line work is.
Oh, Jiminy.
Because I saw it. I saw they were reattaching. There was a 3-wire, which is, I guess, a pretty high voltage thing, and it has some kind of special breaker on it. And the line guy had these big sleeves on, and he went to pop that in, and it popped out.
Oh.
And I mean, the arc and the flames shooting out from this thing, and he was in a bucket, right next to it. I jumped out of my chair because I was watching it from the porch. It's really dangerous work, and I think everybody needs to appreciate that is something that has to be done as methodically, not only for their safety, but everybody else's safety.
For the community, sure. But before you go away, I'd like to have just a brief reiteration and maybe a discussion amongst us with regard to permits at large and fees regarding those permits at large. And let's have a little discussion about that, if you would, please.
Sure. So upon your state of emergency, one of the things that we had done is early on, a few years ago, your fees automatically reduced to 50% when you have a state of emergency for those impacted structures. So we're not talking about new single-family home. We're talking about a home or a building that was impacted. At this particular case, we've also gone back and reevaluated the number of reviews. So in many of the cases where you've got inundation of water, it might require somewhere between 10 and 11 different plan reviews, inspections, to be in adherence to the Florida Building Code. We've gone as far as worked with our building official and our staff to where we're not requiring engineered permitting documents. You're simply just tearing out and rebuilding. But there are some things that we do need to look at to keep the county and that property owner in adherence to the Florida Building Code. So we've reduced that to about 5 different inspections. So from 11 to 5. Your fees are 50% for your application, for your review. And so there's already a discounter put in there, and we're expediting these just as fast as we get them. So again, you've got contractors that are working ahead of us, And we're going back and doing the rough electric, we're doing the rough plumbing, especially when you're ripping out countertops, things like that. And then we're doing the insulation, which is required, especially on those outer walls. That's consistent with the Florida Building Code. So we're inspecting for all of these things. And even if they're doing video inspections, taking photos, we're going back to make sure that as they reoccupy this structure, that it is a safe structure, and that 3 years from now, when we go through the FEMA audit review process, that we're in concurrence with the Florida Building Code as well as with FEMA standards, because as these programs or as these policies start to get called upon by the policyholder, the insurance company is going to come back and say, I want to make sure as I reinsure or as I continue to insure this property that it's consistent, that's a safe structure. So we've thought about this all throughout the process, and again, we have reduced by more than half the number of inspections and reviews that a typical building would have, just if anything, to help people get back on their feet and to get contractors working and to get people back in their homes.
And not certainly to take, certainly from a safety standpoint, I was just, my thought was if, and again, I don't want to cause more trouble than is necessary, but one of my thoughts, we've never had a storm like this. There has never been this much personal or real property damage before, and I wouldn't be opposed to a deferral of those fees for and until we're through with the majority of the construction, and then a triage and a report back from our staff as to what that aggregate number is, and then this board can decide how, when, and where, and what we do with those fees. So that's just Commissioner Taylor.
May I second that? Mr. French's department is an enterprise fund. It's a business.
Right.
Money comes in, money is spent. You don't get the money coming in, you don't spend it. So I think if there was some way, and I may not be here when this is discussed, but if there's some way that we can craft something in a state of emergency such as this, that if we can, as much as we can assist our citizens, many of them don't understand that they might be underinsured. And I have very, very sophisticated people living around me that didn't realize, like, for instance, if you have a flood policy and you do not include within your flood policy your goods, your home goods, you aren't covered for the loss of your furniture inside your house. So things like this are confronting our people. So I would ask that if it's the decision of this board to somehow defer or not charge permit fees right now, that somehow the general fund or whatever is decided
We'll
is
decide
set
how.
aside.
If Commissioner Saunders has a comment, and he's you, Commissioner Saunders.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to under Commission Communications. I think we should waive permitting fees, not defer them, but waive permitting fees for anyone that is reconstructing a house that was damaged from the storm. Now, that doesn't apply to someone who's going to build a new home on a vacant lot. I'm talking about people that have verifiable storm damage and are getting permits. I think the fee should be waived.
My thought was, Commissioner Saunders, I don't mean to interrupt. My thought when I brought it up was a deferral for now, and then triage after the fact, and then we figure out how to pay for it.
Let me finish, because you mentioned the deferral, and I'm saying that I think it would be more appropriate and a whole lot easier, quite frankly, to waive the fees. It's going to be an expense to the general fund. I understand that, but we have a lot of folks that are suffering, and this deferral idea just gives another issue to be worked out down the road. So when it comes to the right time, I had planned on making a motion to waive fees, but to waive those fees for people that had suffered damage from this storm and are repairing that.
And I'm totally fine with that. And my miscommunication was ultimately to waive them. I wanted them to defer today, then triaged, and then an amount come back, and then our staff tell us how we were going to pay for them, whether it came out of the general fund or wherever. So I'm totally fine with waiving them now if we can.
Can you make the motion?
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'll make that motion.
let's hear what he has to say first, and then, yeah.
And I apologize. So just for clarification, we will certainly do that. We'll bring back a report that shows what your total cost was and how you would fund that operation. We'll certainly work with the county manager's office and our budget office. However, just waiving these fees is not a reimbursable expense for FEMA to the county, but also many insurance policies, this is part of their reconstruction costs. So whether or not you're still going to pay a deductible, your permitting fees are covered. Loss of use, as you said, loss of use or loss of household goods, you may be underinsured. But just for clarifications, I don't want you to tell you I didn't say anything, but we're good.
You okay with that?
Yes, sir.
So would it be your preference, Commissioner Saunders, to waive them now or
I'm not sure now.
defer them and then waive them? Because the goal was to defer them now and then figure out what they are and then waive them. All right.
But if I may, I think Mr. French just brought up a tricky point for the homeowners with their insurance. Because it would be a covered expense. I mean, you'd have to meet your deductible.
Correct, but they wouldn't have that expense if we were deferring them and then ultimately waiving them. I mean, that would just be part of the not expense associated with the rebuild.
Maybe we need to have staff come back to us.
How about if we defer them for now and then come back?
Yep.
All right.
You like that idea?
Yeah.
You okay with that?
There's a few complicated
Staff
parts
would
of that.
agree, I'm sorry.
And
Yes.
one of the complicated things that came up for me was, okay, define damage by the hurricane. Is it a shingle off your roof? Or is it,
Period.
you know?
All. Well, for now, let's.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to flesh out. I agree with it, but I think there's a lot of issues that we probably need to
You want to make the motion? You want me to?
work through.
Well, I'll withdraw my other motion,
Okay, and
and I'm not sure what the motion would be, but go
my
ahead.
motion is to defer the permitting fees associated with the hurricane damage.
Storm damage properties.
Yes, and come back to us at our next meeting with some semblance of a report as to what those fees accrued so far are, and again, we'll triage those. This isn't brain surgery. We can triage those and determine that somebody that's applying for a new construction permit, that's not hurricane damage, but
So just for clarification, what we'll do is we'll hold, if it's okay with the board, we'll hold their certificate of completion. In this case, it's not a certificate of occupancy. We'll hold that till final payment or till the board makes a determination, so that way they can continue to work. We won't collect application fees or permitting fees going forward. We'll just hold those in abeyance until we get further guidance from the board, and we'll bring back a report to you if that works. Yeah. We'll separate out commercial from residential, because there may be some cases where you want to focus more so on certain properties, just to trying to help the community get people back in home, but we'll bring all that back to you.
Commissioner Taylor, you got a comment or second?
I'll second it, but I have a comment.
Okay.
Assume we have an aggregate number at the end. Will FEMA come in and reimburse the county for that loss?
No, ma'am.
It has to be an individual by individual, okay.
Got it. Commissioner LaCastro.
As part of that presentation back to us, a big piece that I would like to hear about too is how we're going to expedite permits. You know, I had 2 town halls last night, and a word that I heard from a lot of citizens that scared me, and we corrected the record, is we're not streamlining anything. Jamie, you told me in my office, and it was a really great thing to repeat here, the law hasn't changed on how to build construction because we had a hurricane. So we're not looking to cut corners and then find out 3 or 4 years from now we have some massive damage because of a bunch of streamlined permits. But on the flip side, I want to hear that we have a really aggressive way to triage permits, to maybe beef up the staff more if you haven't done that already, because permits are going to pour in here. And what we really don't want to hear from citizens is, my contractor's ready to go, the permits are in, but county's moving so slow. And my contractor actually started doing the repairs anyway because he said he couldn't wait on the county. I mean, that's a really bad idea. And we mentioned that at the town halls that I had last night. But as part of that, just lastly on permitting, when you say that amount is reimbursable, and then that citizen could pay the permitting fee because they got it back from their insurance. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm not sympathetic to, all the costs that everybody has and the damage, but also too, we don't want to sort of gyp the county out of getting money that could be coming back to us from insurance companies and whatnot. In the end, that goes into a fund that helps all taxpayers. So if we artificially dwindle or lessen that fund to try to be, good Samaritans. But the reality was that money actually could have been reimbursed to the citizen, then paid to the county, and we didn't take such a big hit. Just make that, I'm looking for that fidelity in your presentation to make sure that we sort of don't lean so far forward in a good way, but we maybe sort of miss the nuances of, gypping ourselves out of being able to reimburse the general fund and have the funds available to the county to do a whole bunch of things because, we gave everybody a free coupon. And, some people benefit better from a free permit than maybe others.
We're not giving anybody a free coupon.
Yeah.
And that was the premise of the deferral, triage, review. Then our staff comes back and tell us how we can afford to help our citizens.
But let us know if you need help too.
Yes.
I mean, I know you can't hire 20 people tomorrow, but the permit process is complicated, and let us know how we can help to expedite those permits as quickly as possible and correctly.
The only thing staff would request is that from this board as well as from the community, hire a licensed contractor. As the sheriff said, there are so many different people, and thank goodness for our relationship with him, our code enforcement, our licensing staff. We are finding this where out-of-town folks that are not qualified.
Be still. Let me take care of the motion, and then I want to talk to you about that. That's next on my list before you leave me. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. For now, we defer the permit fees associated with the reconstruction of hurricane damage. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign, same sound, so moved. Now, a brief reiteration, because that was next on my list, and that's a brief reiteration of what folks should be looking for when engaging with the contractor or somebody that's walking up to offer them assistance from a contracting licensure standpoint, insurance, workers' comp, so on and so forth. Just a brief explanation.
So we have seen, in fact, Deputy County Manager Finn and I allegedly may have been out late at night and
allegedly
off of trade winds, and allegedly I say because I other than the sheriff's office, I don't think anyone knew we were there, but we ran upon a contractor that was doing demolition late at night from New York. And so I walk up to him and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm doing work. Are you getting paid?" I mean, so we have a line, we go through it. He was getting paid and he was unlicensed. And now granted, he was hired by the homeowner to do that. And luckily, he handed me a business card from a local licensed contractor. So I had a conversation at 6:30 the next morning with that contractor, and it's as simple as this. If they want to bring in qualified or technical staff from out of state or they simply just need to put them on their payroll. And then they qualify them. And so we encourage that because it does protect the homeowner. It makes sure that folks aren't getting ripped off. It makes sure that if you do have an insurance claim, that you are going to get reimbursed. So I can't stress enough to hire a licensed electrical contractor, but a licensed contractor for any type of work. But also, in anticipation of a very bad event, the day before the storm arrived, we had an emergency contractor's license meeting where your contractor's licensing board assembled, and they passed resolution to allow for the emergency or the expediting of licenses for these licensed people from out of town to come in and get them qualified, to get them licensed. This went from roofers to people that do residential contracting. So we're well ahead of this. And again, we've been working with the sheriff's office and our staff, and we are canvassing the community. So licensed contractor always, please.
And what documentation should a homeowner request when a licensed contractor comes and offers their assistance? Just briefly.
Thank you. You can, every state licensed contractor, you can find them on the licensing portal of the Florida Department of Professional Business Regulations, so the DPBR website. Also, feel free to give us a call at 252-2400. Our contracting licensing staff stands ready and able to help. Also, they can provide documentation. It'll either say GC or CGC. It'll actually provide. And we're not just looking for a business tax receipt. So any business that operates within the state of Florida is required to go to the local tax collector and get a business tax receipt. That's, if they demonstrate that, that's not what we're looking for. Every business has one. We really need to show that they're licensed in that trade or in that element of construction that they're providing for.
And with that,
Go ahead.
excuse me,
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
and with that licensure comes workers' comp, comes liability insurance, comes all those things with that single.
Errors and emissions,
with that-
everything.
With that single checkpoint for the licensure. Okay.
That's correct.
Commissioner Taylor, did I step?
No, I just, so in other words, a GC that's licensed here can bring people in to work under his license, because then they're insured. It's
they-
like the umbrella.
They
Needs to
vet
put them on
the-
payroll.
They vet those contractors from out of state, and that contractor then assumes the responsibility with our building official, so.
Well, but Florida contractors shouldn't loan out their license.
Agreed.
They have to be, the workers come in, I mean, we're getting off into the weeds here, but this is important for people to understand. I mean, these out-of-town workers need to be on that the Florida contractor's payroll.
Correct.
There's all sorts of things about qualifying.
We weren't suggesting
a
that we
construction
loaned that.
business.
Yeah.
But because I know that's out there.
Yes, it is.
Florida contractors can't loan their license out to out-of-state
Right.
contractors.
That's what we encourage, sir.
Right.
Anybody else have any questions for Jamie before I go to the next? No? Okay. Dr. George, didn't mean to disturb you back there. If you would please start heading this way. And Miss Carey, while he's making his way up here, I do have a couple of questions with regard to the debris mission, if you would please. And it's more of a reiteration of what it is we're doing. I know that we have in absentia given priorities to the debris collection, removal, so on and so forth. But if you could, and I received a report, I think yesterday, which was a cumulative report that was very, very specific about how many trucks there were, what the daily haul amounts were, estimates, and so on. If you could make sure that we get those reports as often as is possible, if it is every day, if you're generating that report every day, I'd like to see it every day.
Yes,
So.
absolutely. That's certainly something we can provide to the commissioners every day. What we've did is we have 90% of the fleet focused on these areas that have been impacted by flooding and storm surge. The highest priority is anything that is those life, safety, and health threats, that construction and demolition debris. We understand, and we've been out, we're doing the assessments just as our growth management folks have. We've worked with them on flooded structures, so we know where there's concentrated areas of flooded structures. We're putting a lot of forces in there. This is week 2 of debris removal. So we started 5 days after the storm. So within the first 7 days, over 130,000 cubic yards have been collected. We've got the fleet of 142. We're going to stay in these areas where there are these heavy concentrations of these risks that are out there. As soon as we remove it, it comes right back out. So there is again, 90% of the fleet in the other areas of the county where there is other substantial damage. We do have presence there. By week 4, everyone will see a truck every 7 days is the goal. So we haven't put out route maps or anything of that nature because we are really staying focused. Isles of Capri is a great example. Barefoot is a great example. We, the day after, made a list of about 7 areas along the coast that we were just very concentrated on due to the volume of damage from this storm surge. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Just because I mean we have spoken about those priorities and how we're managing through that, and just because there's a pile in front of someone's house and we go get it doesn't mean that there isn't another one the next day. They have a certain amount of capacity, so I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Commissioner LeCastro, you have a question?
Just Carrie, while you're there, and we spoke a lot last night, my phone's blowing up from 1 or 2 citizens from Henderson Creek. So just if you'd add that to your list, and we can talk later, but I just thought, while I was thinking of it and you were standing there, I mean, I'm very impressed at how you've triaged and prioritized everything. And, and I think we've all been, honest with citizens that if they have a pile of palm fronds in front of their house, that's not the priority. But, they had some flooding there and whatnot, and we can trade notes afterwards. But I believe they are on your priority list. There's just only so many places you guys can get to.
Sure, absolutely appreciate that.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Carrie. Dr. George, just a brief synopsis on how we fared with managing our lift stations, pump stations. I know we made this board, and 4 of us were here during Irma, after Irma, and I know this board made some adjustments from a policy standpoint, regulation standpoint. If you would please, how did our systems fare?
Absolutely, Commissioner. One of the things I want to add to our director in charge, solid waste, indicated, our goal is clean up Collier County, including all of our cities, City of Naples, City of Marco, City of Everglades, before Thanksgiving. This county will have a clean Thanksgiving and will enjoy it. That's our ultimate goal in terms of overall cleaning up Collier County and our cities. Going back to other critical infrastructure, I want to start with water. Usually we don't talk about water. I'll get to lift stations because we do have lift stations and pump stations in our water system too. They are invisible. First 72 hours, our crews, first 72 hours after landfall, our crews were able to fix 344 water main breaks. And 3+ in Goodland. Why it is important? That's how we stabilized our pressure, water quality, water production, and not overloading our well fields. First 5 days to 7 days, we were over 400 water main breaks fixed and stabilized. During this time, we were helping our partner city of Naples, providing them water, sustain their pressure and fire flows, as well as keep their customers flowing with fresh water. On the wastewater things, we had about 560 lift stations out of power going into day 5. We had only 3 SSOs, meaning system sewer overflows, less than 1,000 gallon. Why it's important? State warning point has to be notified if it's over 1,000 gallons. So we have done tremendously very well, given the magnitude of the impact. We have 43 stations down to 36. We have pumper, truck, relay operations as we speak. That means we have no service interruptions to our customers on northwest side of our service area because of the fact that 24/7 we're moving our wastewater. Oh, by the way, we're treating it to be IQ water. Now sunshine is up, high pressure is up, now our IQ demand is up. Yes, we are meeting irrigation quality water demand as we speak, and we never been out of IQ water quality produced. And I hope that highlights very briefly what we have been up to 72 hours, 5 days and 7 days out of storm hit. And also, I'm pleased to inform our governing board that our water system has been identified by FEMA and Florida Department of Environmental Protection as one of the safest. So we were able to trucking water out through FEMA contractors to our sister counties north, Osceola and Lee County, among other cities, that we were able to provide supply of water. And I'm also pleased to inform you that we were the first county impacted under federal declaration, returned within 72 hours, garbage recycling and recycle center operations.
Outstanding. Commissioner Taylor, do you have something for Dr. George?
Oh, yes. So if I wrote this down, Dr. George, 506 lift stations out of power the first 5 days.
Yes.
So So I would assume that the generators that the 1 penny tax purchased really came in great, they were put to use, let me put it that way.
Yes, ma'am, you're correct.
And so now we have, how many are still on generators right now?
Currently, we have 43 master pump stations and about 6 community stations, and there's about less than 5 on smaller generator operating due to feeder errors. And also, Commissioner, just because we have FPNL power doesn't mean it's reliable. So we continue to operate generators until we have what we consider steady state clean FPNL power.
Okay. Dr. George, thank you very much. You mentioned SSO?
Sewer system overflow.
Yeah. And were there any backups in residential homes like the last storm?
No property damage, 3 reported, they were fixed overnight.
The 3 reported were less than 1,000 gallons, which are the threshold for reporting to the EPA?
No, sir. Those are 2 different things. SSOs coming from manholes and lift stations. Backups to the home, meaning they are not able to flush, but no property damage. That was more on their service lines because of the tree damage.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
I hope I was able to clarify that.
Appreciate it.
And I want to also recognize our facilities management team. They are silent doers. Out of 560 government facilities, we have done damage assessment, and we already have our insurance team under Jeff Walker working our insurance claims. And during the storm, no facility that was activated and actively being utilized did go out of power due to our reliable generator power system that we did not have during Irma, including our shelters.
Outstanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks to everybody that was involved in that. All right. Last but not least, Mr. Summers. I would like just a reiteration of your perception of what we're going to do from a housing perspective. It's you know, the debris cleanup, prioritization of the debris cleanup. What is our staff doing to move forward, lean forward on assisting those that have been displaced?
There are dozens of pathways, and that's all I can really best define it right now are pathways. There's no quick, easy fix to this. So let me reiterate just a little bit. First of all, the FEMA Individual and Family Assistance. That is the financial resources to do something. That is also the financial resources to make some emergency repairs. We are looking at other funding sources such as the state housing improvement program and maybe some modifications to available HUD funding. FEMA also has provided other needs assessment funding, which might help some medically dependent situations. The additional program, of course, I mentioned, which was Blue Roof, and then expedited funding from the National Flood Insurance Program for eligible flood policy holders. The Transition Sheltering System, TSA, Transitional Shelter Assistance, has been rolled out, but again, that is dependent upon hotel rooms, and we can only hope more hotel rooms become available. So that's where we are with that. A temporary housing mission. And again, there's lots of challenges ahead of anything associated with a FEMA travel trailer. Let's make sure that there's a discussion between, or a distinction between a travel trailer and a mobile home, okay? And if those programs are, if they are turned on by FEMA, you want those to be a FEMA run or a FEMA federally led program because they're quite challenging. And there are also very few waivers or exceptions noted for travel trailers or mobile homes in flood zones unless they are potentially stay on wheels or they have to be elevated. No question the state of Florida and FEMA are looking closely at temporary housing mission programs. As I mentioned, because we are adjacent to Lee County, I can't imagine that whatever is set up for Lee, Collier will not be eligible. And that may take a little bit of time. If I don't think that there's enough traction, I'll put in a request for a federally led housing mission. But again, I have to stress to you that the requirements are rigorous. It has not happened quickly. And our best philosophy is to try to find opportunities to use existing housing resources to the extent possible. I know they've had sheetrock and drywall damage. I understand that, but we can all get by with a roof and a concrete floor if necessary as a housing unit, and that is certainly one component that we've talked about. So strategically, make the best use of existing housing to the best that we can, safely as we can. We know a lot of areas are addressing power needs and power situations that were inundated by salt water or impacted. Our hotels, we do have a lot under construction here. And outside of my swim lane, but certainly keeping these other projects on schedule, or hoping that these projects in new construction moves forward, or apartments that are in construction, hopefully they'll keep moving, because that might afford some of those folks an opportunity. So, Commissioner, I'll be real candid, is that we're going to open as many pathways as we can, and I'm sure, as Jamie French has already alluded to, find opportunities to speed that along, but it's going to be challenging.
And I just wanted, and Jamie's left the room for some reason, but I wanted to talk about the capacity of an individual homeowner to park an RV in front of their home while they were reconstructing. And if I'm not mistaken, that is permittable. And
That is permittable. I believe it's a no-cost counter permit, if I'm saying that correctly.
And it's important that we say permittable.
Right.
Because it ends up being permissible, but people go to permission first and then ask later. And we want to make sure that you go get a permit and that it is hooked up properly, both in power and disposal of wastewater.
And Jamie has taught me well on that. Again, that doesn't preclude a HOA restriction. So
Oh, yes,
again,
that's a whole
important for
that's a
your
whole nother key.
homeowners association approval. And then obviously the trailers, an RV is a DOT approved type for utility connection.
Correct. And Jamie's right there. If you would let him speak just a moment on that
Now Jamie can correct the record. No
permittability. Oh, we had
I'm going to, again, for the record, Jamie French, I've got with us today your interim director of community planning and resiliency,
That's a pretty form.
Chris Mason, who's also our floodplain coordinator for the county. And Chris has worked intimately on your floodplain ordinance as well as this policy that you've already adopted. So with that.
Okay. Hello, Chris.
Good morning. Chris Mason for the record. With regards to temporary permitting for travel trailers, and we're really talking about road-ready domiciles, what we would be looking at is to have it be tied to a building permit that has been identified as been, let's say, a major damage event as far as this storm is included. So they're really going to be focusing on areas that were damaged with, home damage. So we don't really see them just popping up around the county in areas that weren't damaged. So
of course,
not to see like a green light to that.
Certainly, it potentially could happen where someone would just go apply for a permit to park an RV in front of their house, but the goal is to have it allowable for permittable for a homeowner that's in the reconstruction process.
That is correct. And what we would do is we would identify it within our permitting system.
Very good. Very good. Commissioner Taylor, did you have a question on this?
I have a question on, I think from Dan, but not specific.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
Just
And
briefly,
then I'd like to address the county manager after Dan's done with you.
Okay, I'm not digressing that much, but is our special needs shelter still in operation?
Our special needs shelter, everyone has been successfully placed. We still have a general population shelter open at North Collier Regional Park. But all our, at the relocation of those individuals if they were not able to go back to their home or to another facility or had family or friends. Our partners at Florida Department of Health and Elder Affairs found the appropriate placement because a special needs shelter is not a great long-term situation, and we want to get these folks back in a stable, medically supported environment, and we have no one at special needs.
I do not know this trailer by trailer, but I know it from driving through the area, which is Moorhead, and which is off of Bay Shore. And apparently there are some folks within that area that probably need more than a damaged trailer to surround them, and they're retired and they're elderly. So is there some, how do we approach this? I know I'm talking on the camera, but still, I think it's important that people know that we are reaching out into individual communities.
Well, that's correct, and we made supply drops there this morning. We put shelf-stable meals, meals ready to eat, bottled water, meals ready to eat, and some cleanup kits out there as something to support that community. That drop was made this morning. So we are putting some supplies out there. I know that the manager's office has had dialogue with the management out there, and we'll continue to track that. And, we have, if we run into a special situation, we can possibly, we have options. We really do have options, and we'll, I won't go into all of those, but we'll find some opportunity for assistance that is appropriate and even some placement if necessary.
Thank you.
We'll do our best.
Thank you very much.
County Manager, did you want to address a couple of things here with regard to the housing?
Sure.
Or with anything, really?
Absolutely. So I'll just address Moorhead Manor quickly. We did have Mr. Finn in the neighborhood yesterday afternoon. It appears that the management of that area, of that park, has gone door to door, and they're assessing their needs. So they do have our contact information, so that in the event there are things that come up as we move into this recovery process, we'll be able to evaluate that and provide the appropriate level of assistance. Mr. Finn can come up if you have any specific questions, but I think this is just we'll keep a finger on the pulse of that to be sure that we have eyes there. Secondly, on the housing, of course, not to get out in front of FEMA or our state partners, as they are the lead. We still will work here to understand the inventory. Mr. Bierns from Tourism has obviously been maintaining an inventory of available hotel rooms, which fluctuates almost on a daily basis, and hopefully will improve as some of these facilities are able to repair and come back online, as well as we will begin an inventory of what our available apartment stock is, including those that are nearing completion. So we'll have an understanding of what may be coming into the market. Now, we know that we were having an inventory issue prior to the storm. Don't expect the storm helped that. So it's going to be a little bit of a delicate situation. And lastly, we'll look unconventionally at what the availability is in some of these other mobile home and trailer parks where there may be available sites should folks want or elect to place a travel trailer. And again, there's requirements with FEMA about them remaining road ready and such, but the county will at least have an idea of where we may be able to place these types of assets should it come to that, and also so that we have an understanding of how we may assist both the state and the feds, depending on the type of mission that they undertake.
Bottom line, it's an inventory of what we've got available that potentially could be utilized when FEMA, it's almost, as you said, it's almost impossible to believe that there won't be some kind of a housing mission with regard to this certain devastation that has occurred in Fort Myers. And we know we have a good bit of folks who are displaced personally here in Collier County. And so our preparations are in front of, but in concert with what FEMA's in fact planning on doing.
Yes, and
okay.
Just lastly is the ability for folks to put those travel trailers in their driveways in these heavily damaged areas may be something that gives people comfort, because it appears that lots of folks want to stay with their property, understand they want to be able to work on their property, they want to secure their property. So this may be a good avenue and maybe one of the other ways we can help is talking to folks about how we may be able to resource, because like all things, supply is scarce, and getting a line on where people may be able to acquire these types of travel trailers may be an exercise for both us and some of our not-for-profit partners.
Yeah, I spoke to a friend who was driving from Montana and bought one out there because he knew there would be a supply issue, and he lives in the city of Naples, and he's on his way. So anything else for the good of the order? No. Okay. Jamie, are you ready, willing, and able to share something I forgot to ask
Yes,
about?
sir. Thank you. And I hate to call out Danny Hudson from our friends over at the Naples Area Board of Realtors, but we were having some hallway discussions, so the board knows that we did have very early conversation as this storm was making landfall with NABOR to look at the potential of some of the vacation rental market to find out, because I'm certain that most of these property owners may want to maintain some sort of level of income by putting heads in beds, and especially in the North Naples area where we know we took a great deal of devastation on the beach area, so their vacation rental market may be gone this year. So Danny and I had some discussion, and I don't know, Commissioners, if you have any questions for her, but we are working very diligently with our Naples Area Board of Realtors, and we do appreciate their partnership throughout this.
You've been mentioned. Would you like to say a few words, young lady? Sure, of course.
Thank you, Jamie. Danielle Hudson, and I am the Vice President of Public Policy at the Naples Area Board of Realtors. Just to give you guys an update, guys and gal, on where we are. Anyone that wants to take a look at our available short-term rental stock can do so on naplesarea.com. That website will bring you to all of the rental availability through our master listing service, or MLS. There is, and I will just preface that by saying, there is a gray space between what may be available in our MLS and what is also available on some of your other short-term rental servicing platforms like Airbnb and VRBO. In some cases, what's listed on those sites are not listed in our MLS, so just be aware of that if you are an individual that's looking to take advantage of some of those rental opportunities. Also, we are in conversation with our colleagues in Lee County and Estero and Bonita, and potentially working together to put all of our rental stock on one site. And I will certainly give that to the county once we have that available. That's already being put into process. We're working through a third-party group that's going to do that for us. Lastly, and this is something I was just talking with Jamie about, we've had some brokers come to us with questions about homes that are available but are not currently registered as rentals, or that are not currently registered as a short-term rental. So what do I mean by that second bucket? Those would be homes that are longer-term rentals. Maybe they rent seasonally for 6 months or maybe even a year, but they don't currently have anyone in them, but they want to put somebody in them legally. We're trying to work our heads around how people would be able to do that with the constrictions in terms of BRT or the rental registration ordinance that you all have, or the requirement for DBPR licensing. So I'm going to open up that conversation with our state representatives to see if maybe we can get some sort of waiver from the DBPR license. I don't know if that will be possible, but if so, that may open up some of these homes that are not currently registered with you all as a short-term rental underneath your ordinance, from having to go through that rigorous process to be able to rent their homes in the immediate short term. So we are looking at all of those opportunities, and certainly we're open to continue to talking about other options that might be available that come up.
Outstanding. And if you could please coordinate with staff, I'd like to hear a report on that availability and what we can and can't. I'm concerned about maybe jumping ahead too much on the short-term rental side of things because of health, safety, and welfare, and that can get out of hand like that.
Totally.
So, but I'd like if you, as you're coordinating with our staff, so that we can get a report on those availabilities and then be able to push it through.
One of the other things, sorry, not to take up too much more of your time, but just to think about, and this was something that I had also just spoken with Jamie about, is potentially taking a look at, and you guys don't have very strict ordinances as it relates to short-term rentals, but potentially ordinances that you could, as it relates to like noise or parking, that you may want to suspend just in the short term, especially if you have families that might be being displaced into homes that are maybe not accustomed to having a bunch of kids in the yard, and maybe there's more noise or there's more cars because you have multiple families that are being put into these homes. So just, I'm throwing that out there. I don't want to.
Don't throw that out there.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Just so you know, we're going to manage those on a case by case. We have a
Okay.
very effective, reactive code enforcement circumstance, and in the event that unusual circumstances come up in a neighborhood that isn't used to kids and noise and
We're
things,
just trying to
parking,
think through everything,
we'll deal with those through the code enforcement. But thank you for that
You're welcome.
input. Appreciate it. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I did think of one last thing for the good of the order, if I may.
You're not going to make a motion to close, are you?
To adjourn?
No.
No.
Okay, good.
No. I would like Trinity Scott to maybe say a few words about the beach itself. We drove the beach from Wiggins Pass all the way down to Clam Pass on Friday. And I'm assuming that my colleagues are getting the same emails. We want to go to the beach. We want to go to the beach. When can we go to the beach? And I've been telling them there's a lot of stuff in the beach and in the water, and it's really not safe yet.
For the record, Trinity Scott, Department Head for Transportation Management Services, but I also have the beaches. We have been out since the Friday after the storm, raking the beaches. We have put out a lot of messages through our social media with regard to the beaches. Most of our beach access points suffered damage that has not been repaired, obviously. When Commissioner Solis and I were out on the beach on Friday, we still have very large items washing up on shore, boat docks, etc. So as far as the beaches go, we want people to take extreme caution if they are on the beaches.
Or in the waterways.
Or, absolutely, or within the waterways. There is significant debris that will continue to wash up. We are nearly complete with our initial raking. We will begin some tilling operations to see what may be up underneath that surface sand. So this is just for anyone who may venture out. Extreme caution. We have large equipment on the beaches right now doing this work. If you go into the water, understand that there are vessels, that there are cars, that there are things that have been in the water, are in the water in the process of being removed from the water. We just want people to be very, very, very cautious.
And I'll just say that, and I took pictures of some, on our drive, pieces of docks submerged. You can see the nails sticking out of them, aluminum, pieces of mangroves that are kind of under the water that you can't really see. And so you have to be really careful to get out there because there's a lot of hazards, I think, in the water. Any idea how we're going to address that? I mean, once the water quality is not very good right now either, but will we somehow try to get a handle on what's in the water?
So absolutely, currently right now, at least from the tidally influenced waterways, we are out doing debris assessments right now as we speak. We have folks who are actually kayaking some of those flagging areas. I just received that we're issuing a notice to proceed to start pulling out some of that debris. Now, with regard to vessels and vehicles, we are working very closely with the Sheriff's Office because there are private property issues along with that. And in fact, one of the vehicles I think that you actually sent us the video of, we have been able to work through the Sheriff's Office, make contact with the owner who had reported their vehicle missing.
The Audi A4 and
Yes.
Vanderbilt. Nice.
And They're working right now with their private insurance carrier to be able to get that vehicle removed from the waterway. So we're working very closely with Sheriff's Office as well as FWC because we do have several vessels as well as vehicles within some of our waterways.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. It's 12 o'clock and we have a few more agenda items. I know we have some public speakers that have signed up on this agenda item, so we'll go to them. But it would be my vote that we finish the balance. What time are you due for another break? Or are you good right now, for now? I just assume we not take lunch, come back in an hour and continue. Let's get through without rushing. Let's get through what we have to do to conduct our business. So we won't take lunch today. So public speaking.
One registered speaker online on Zoom, Albert Councilman. Mr. Councilman, you've been asked to unmute yourself. I see you're unmuted, sir. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you very much for having me.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I'm representing the Gulf Breeze Condominium Association, which is 132 families on Bluebill Avenue. And I want to first thank the commissioners and also the directors who have been speaking, that you have been very responsive and very helpful, and we are very grateful for all that you've done to help us through this process, which is new for all of us. So my question is a routine process question and probably won't take a long time, hopefully won't take very long to answer. And I think it's relevant to all community associations and condominium associations. And that is, we've been doing the necessary things to restore the building to safety, power and water and sewer and cleaning out debris and muck. And we've had water trucked in the interim while there wasn't water service. We've also been cleaning and have had contractors on site. So we're going through the process that everybody else is going through as well. So the next step after that, that's my question, the FEMA disaster assistance. I've been to the website and I understand how individuals and families can apply for assistance. What I don't understand from going through the website is how condominium associations, which I guess would be a small business, how they apply for disaster assistance. And so whatever guidance you can provide us and other condominium associations with what is that process so that we can get it started and properly follow it and do whatever is necessary at the appropriate time. We are insured, federal flood insurance. And as a matter of fact, our claim adjuster is on site now going through the site and going through our property. So we are going through that process, but I know that FEMA will provide assistance beyond what's insurable, such as roads and pathways, cleanup, water trucks, 24-hour security. As an aside, the security that Collier County is providing has been essential because we have experienced some of the bad things that were described. And so we're very grateful for that security. So protecting our residents, some of whom are permanent residents and some of whom are seasonal residents. So that's the extent of my observation. I want to say thank you very much, but we are looking for some guidance going forward about the process of filing the applications for FEMA and or SBA assistance. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Dan Summers is here going to address it briefly, but I'm going to say this to everybody who just heard you ask your question. And we call them in the business, we call them one-offs. Anybody that has a specific question or concern can email any one of us on circumstantial aspects of how you need to get through the process. Send an email to me, myself, to any one of the five of us, and we'll get you to the particular place that you need to be. But Mr. Summers, you want to address briefly that?
Commissioner, yes, for the record, Dan Summers. Just wanted to mention a couple of things. You're exactly right. A lot of these associations may be incorporated in different ways. And so in some cases, they may be eligible for some FEMA assistance. In some cases, they may not for direct assistance. So I want to be careful that you make sure that I'm sharing with you what I think the options are. I don't know this particular situation, but job one, you've answered the question that you have your adjuster on site. And your adjuster will work with you both for flood and property damage, will work with you on things such as pathways, other impacts to your association and to your particular community building. It is from that point, after those particular issues are resolved, more than likely, if there is financial need, it will not be a FEMA direct individual assistance unless it's for the condo owner. But then it's more likely to be resources that may be available from the SBA. And 99 times out of 100, that is a loan, not a grant. And so you may need that for other repairs. I know we are expecting some more SBA announcements in the days to come. So there are a myriad of programs that have been announced already, and maybe a few more that are forthcoming. So again, job one with your insurance folks, both property and flood, that will guide you on those other items. Secondly, my recommendation to you is to let's see what opens up with SBA. And again, your insurance carrier is job one.
Now, I know we've got the FPL, how do you get your home re-energized back up on the screen, but we also have a FEMA workshop scheduled here in these chambers tomorrow night. And if somebody could load up that link for folks to be able to have that information and have it streaming constantly between now and when that in fact transpires. I know I set aside the evening with the commission that I do once a month tomorrow night to try to focus folks in on what FEMA has coming for our community.
We will.
Commissioner Taylor, real quick, or not?
Yeah, just really
I didn't mean to be quick.
No.
You're good.
No. It's really quick. Just tomorrow night is not about specific neighborhoods.
No.
Tomorrow night is to tell FEMA, and not the FEMA people that are at the EOC right now, but maybe their bosses and maybe their bosses' bosses, if we're lucky enough, the problems and the challenges this community has with affordable housing, any housing, and what a crisis we have with the number of homes that have been damaged and the number of unlivable structures people are living in. That's what we have to keep to that dialogue. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Very good.
Dan.
Thank
And
you.
Without belaboring the accolades from me to you, thank you. Thank you for what you've done for our community. Commissioner Saunders said it best, but I just want to say from me to you, I spent an enormous amount of time over there at the EOC and just watching that operation. We're blessed to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay. We only had one public speaker.
Okay.
Yes.
And and I think we addressed his issues. So let's take care of 11B. I think that's it. That one's turn right there.
That moves us to 11B, a recommendation to approve additional fiscal year 2023 budget amendments in the amount of $95,263,800, covering post-Hurricane Ian cleanup and recovery for debris removal, the stormwater network, water and wastewater, road and bridge, parks, beaches, and governmental facility repairs, and other storm-related costs, including additional funding for the sheriff. Mr. Ed Finn, your deputy county manager, will present.
Commissioner Saunders.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to approve this. I know Mr. Finn has met with the clerk, Ms. Kinzel, and I know more details will be forthcoming, but she has reviewed this and advised that she's okay with this going forward at this time. And I want to thank you for providing that information to her. So I'll make the motion to approve this.
Second.
Okay. You want to put up your brief graphic for me? Just the pie chart that you gave me yesterday, just so we can show what it is that we're doing. And I'm in concurrences, as long as we've been communicating and everybody's okay with, you got notes on that one. That's the one we like to see. That's the inside Ed story.
This is the super secret pie chart, yeah. In Edward Finn, your interim deputy manager. Thank you so much. Pie charts there. One thing I wanted to mention is the additional funding for the sheriff is to cover some overtime that was necessarily incurred as part of the disaster. And that is going to apply to the FY22 budget. That's a little different than is described there. Pie chart is kind of a lot going on there. I'll point out two things to the board. To the immediate right of the center line at the top is the portion of general fund money earmarked for this effort. Then continuing around to the right, the gray chunk of money, that's $30 million. That's out of Fund 301. That's the reserve the board has set up over the last two or 3 years to aid us in these type of missions, as well as to provide continuity on capital facility maintenance in the event of a downturn. The rest of the funding is essentially provided by solid waste funds earmarked for this, some reductions in solid waste projects, some not deferrals, but some changing of funding for some utility projects. The board is going to be asked to approve a commercial commercial paper to support the Collier County Water Sewer District capital program. So that's going to be set up so that this particular cash funding need that we need today is not going to negatively impact their long-term needs in terms of their projects and renewal and replacement efforts. With that, sir.
And just you and I spoke about it yesterday, but I just want to say out loud that there are no capital projects that are being delayed when we're pulling money out of these reserves. This is money that's being stored up for future capital projects, and we're not delaying anything, any of these capital projects by pulling out of these reserves.
That in fact is our intent. The commercial paper is going to ensure that we can put budget in place when those contracts are ready to be let. The intent being that the momentum we have on these projects is not impacted by this effort.
And we set that up so that it can be turned on when the capital project requisite is there, if we haven't replaced the funding in some other mechanism.
And the board will be seeing that in the near future.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We approve this as presented. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign, same sound. So moved. That was a really good report.
Very nice. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Why the heck are you still interim?
Yeah, I was just going to say, he introduced himself as interim.
It's not our business.
I just sent a signal to Amy.
That brings us to item 15. First, item 15A is our second portion of public comment on general topics not on the current or future agenda by individuals not already heard during the previous public comments this meeting.
As it turns out, all I have is comments from previous speakers under item 7. So do you want to give them another bite of the apple here, or are we?
Specifically, this is for people that haven't had an opportunity to address in item 7 already.
Yeah, I mean, these 3 people have spoke already under item 7.
Okay, so then no.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 15B, which is staff and commission general communications. We were going to talk about rock crushing, but we've already covered that, so we'll be coming back to you on that. Other than that, Dan? Thank you.
County Attorney?
Nothing further. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Solis, how about you have a comment or two?
No, other than to again thank the staff, all the first responders, second responders, third responders, county manager's office. It's a well-oiled machine, and I again the commitment that every single staff person has in Collier County is really inspiring in these situations. So thank you for all you do and your commitment to the community.
Chart. Very well said. Commissioner LaCastro.
Yeah, I'll just add, Amy, Dan, and Ed, you guys were just an incredible team in the EOC. I mean, all the commissioners, we were there, camped out at times, and also running all over our district. But not only were you leaning forward and leaders in the EOC, but I think I speak for all of us. Your sense of urgency replying to all of us. I mean, the minute I sent any one of you a text, boom, on it. Carrie, the same way. Dr. George. So, as a group, if this was the hardest hit storm we've had come to this community, I think we're well prepared for what eventually will continue to come. I mean, that's just the nature of living in paradise. I did also want to give a shout out to John Mullins. He had and he's probably shocked that I'm doing this, but boy, that guy got a lot of short notice. Yeah, the senator will be dropping in on the EOC in X number of minutes, and he just skillfully really coordinated a lot of those visits and made them more than photo ops. I mean, I heard from Senator Scott afterwards. He actually popped down to Goodland a few days later, and he and his team were really impressed that we didn't just sort of put up the cameras and take a few pictures. That it was very valuable. John was pulling all the key people into the 311 room and walking them around to the different desks and whatnot, and that was impressive, and people really appreciated that. I mean, the senator gave everybody a coin, and it made it seem like a small little thing, but he could have easily come in and out, and John did his best to guide him and steer him and keep him as long as humanly possible so that he could see what we were doing. And lastly, I want to really give a positive comments to NCH. Everyone knows Matt Holliday was there camped out in the EOC, sun up to sundown. The guy was like unshaven, wearing the same clothes for 3 days, and like a lot of us. But I personally needed a lot of help from NCH and medical things, as we all did. And instead of having to call a number, and Paul Hiltz as well. I mean, he was on the other end of text messages instantaneously. And this is a guy that's the CEO of a huge medical group that had a whole lot on his plate. And so I think that showed a lot. I won't get into details, but Dan and I had sort of a private conversation about people who were missing in the EOC, who we really needed and who have seats at the table. And we'll just leave it at that. I would expect after all this dust settles, like we do every time, Dan, we have an after action about, lessons learned. And this storm really tested every single nuance of the county, and it showed where we're so strong, where we have a deep bench, but also where we could have used a little support here and there. Luckily, with your leadership and the leadership of the people I just mentioned, we did fill in the gaps, but that's not what we want to do. We want gaps full. But I did want to give a shout out to NCH and to our team here personally, and for all that I definitely saw and benefited from for my district that got hit very hard as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Taylor.
Nothing really, except a big thank you. It's deja vu too quickly, as far as I'm concerned, but here we are. We've not had a hurricane like this for over 60 years. I don't know what the measurement of a generation, but that's got to be a couple of generations. People forgot. We have been reminded. And clearly, what I've learned is, one of the things I've learned from this is that the Florida building codes work. When you see structures that the waves have gutted out the bottom floor and the second floor remains untouched, facing the beach, on the ground level, you realize that there's a reason that we're building the way we're building. Resiliency is a word that's being batted around, but I consider Collier County government and the people who work here resilient. What you've done in this short period of time, and what is in front of us, the task in front of us, which will not be solved in a year or two, is daunting. But I think we're up to I know we're up to the tasks. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Summers, for everything that you have done, for your calmness and your guiding us through this hurricane. And we've got a future, and it's going to be a bright one. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything to add other than, again, thank you to staff. I said this at the EOC. Watching everybody working there made me proud to be part of the team here, and it was just a job well done. So, and it's a job that's ongoing. So when I say job well done, I don't mean to imply it's over, but everybody worked hard and continued to do so, and I just want to thank everybody for that.
Well, and again, myself, I've already said thank you, so I won't say it. Well, I will. Thank you. Thank all of you. I would like to bring up 2 items before you run off. As we know, there are some things that are going on outside of Collier County, and I would like for a report from our staff with regard, Jamie. I saw you working on something else. I don't want you multitasking while I'm talking right now. I would like to have a report soon on a limited review and approval process for agriculturally zoned lands for limited use permits. We have people that need to be stored. We have boats that need to be stored. We have cars that need to be stored. I don't want to circumvent any community rights or negatively impact neighbors, but I certainly don't want to take on any environmental concerns that are arduous or going to negatively impact our community. But I would like us to have a process of a limited review. When a special use permit comes in, it can sometimes take a year before that is through the system, and I would like for us to have a limited review process for those special use permits ASAP. We know there's a housing unit or a housing mission that's coming in some form or format, and where it's in fact located could potentially be in eastern Collier County, out there off the end of State Road 82, east of Fort Myers. And so I would like for us to be able to have that opportunity. Secondarily, if it meets with my colleagues here, there are some lands that are directly east of the landfill that I would like to have opened up and have staff do a review on those lands directly east of the landfill and the potential uses that are out there, and have staff come back to us and give us a report on some of the potential uses that might be able to be utilized in those lands east of the landfill. So, and we already covered the permitting fees, deferral and such. So other than that, those are my 2 items. And again, I want to wish everyone well and continued recovery. Thank you.
Thank you.